They left her to die in the rain, wheelchair and all. What her own family didn't count on was a stranger with nothing to lose taking the wrong turn at exactly the right time. One abandoned woman, one widowed father, one decision that would expose a fortune, unravel a conspiracy, and prove that sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the one you're born into. This is the story of the night Ethan Cole stopped for a ghost, and how that choice saved 2 lives instead of 1. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like judgment. Ethan Cole's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his wipers beating a frantic rhythm that couldn't keep pace with the October storm. The highway construction had forced him onto Route 9, a 2-lane road he'd never taken before, carved through woods that pressed close enough to swallow the headlights whole. His phone sat dark in the cup holder. No signal out here, naturally, and his daughter's daycare closed in 20 minutes. He was already late. Again. The guilt was familiar, a low hum beneath everything else he carried. 3 years since the accident. 3 years of being both parents, both incomes, both sources of comfort, when Maya woke up crying for the mother who'd never come home. 3 years of learning that love wasn't always enough when you were one person trying to do the work of 2. The road curved sharply. Ethan eased off the gas, focusing on the vanishing center line, when his headlights caught something that made his breath stop cold. A figure. Middle of the road, sitting perfectly still. He slammed the brakes. The truck fishtailed, tires screaming against wet asphalt, before jerking to a stop 15 feet from impact. Jesus Christ, Ethan breathed. His hand shook as he threw the truck into park, heart hammering against his ribs. Through the rain-streaked windshield, the figure resolved into clarity that made even less sense than the initial shock. A young woman, mid-20s maybe, sitting in a wheelchair in the middle of an empty road, head bowed, completely motionless. No car nearby. No house lights visible through the trees, just her, alone in the downpour, wearing what looked like pajamas already soaked through. Every instinct screamed contradiction. Stop and help. Drive around and call for help when you get signal. Protect yourself. Protect others. Be a good man. So, be a smart man. Ethan reached for his phone, still no bars, and made his decision. He grabbed the emergency poncho from behind his seat and stepped out into the storm. Rain hit him like a fist, cold and merciless, instantly finding every gap in his jacket. He jogged toward the wheelchair, boots splashing through puddles that reflected his headlights in fractured gold. "Ma'am? Hey, are you okay?" No response. Her head stayed down, dark hair plastered to her face, shoulders curved inward like she was trying to disappear into herself. Ethan circled to the front, kneeling to bring himself to her eye level. Water ran down his face as he gently touched her shoulder. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her head lifted slowly, and what he saw made his stomach drop. She was young, younger than he'd thought, with sharp features softened by exhaustion and fear. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Gray-blue and huge, they held the kind of terror that came from knowing exactly how bad things could get. Her lips were nearly purple, her whole body shaking with cold that had moved past discomfort into genuine danger. "Please," she whispered, the word barely audible over the rain. "Please help me." "I've got you," Ethan said immediately. "Let's get you out of this weather. My truck's right there." He started to move behind the wheelchair when her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "Wait," her voice cracked. "You have to promise me something first." "Ma'am, you're hypothermic. We need to—" "Promise me you won't take me to a hospital." Her eyes locked onto his with desperate intensity. "Please." "I'll explain everything, but you have to promise. No hospital, no police. Not yet." Ethan's training, 12 years as an insurance investigator before the accident forced him into quieter work, kicked in automatically. This wasn't a random breakdown. This wasn't an accident. Everything about this situation was wrong in ways that suggested intention. "Are you in danger?" "Yes." The word came out on a sob. "But not from you. Never from you. I can feel it." It was the kind of statement that should have sent him running. Irrational, emotional. Exactly the type of complication a single father with a daughter waiting at daycare couldn't afford. But Ethan had learned something in 3 years of solo parenting. Sometimes you trusted your gut over your logic because logic didn't account for the moments that changed everything. And his gut was screaming that leaving this woman here was wrong. "Okay," he said quietly. "I promise. No hospital, no police. But I'm taking you somewhere warm and dry, and then you're going to tell me everything." The relief that flooded her face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Save your energy." Ethan moved behind the wheelchair, testing the handles. Manual, not electric. Decent quality, but clearly not new. He began pushing her toward the truck, fighting the chair's small wheels against the rain-slicked road. "What's your name?" he called over the storm. "Lena." She had to repeat it louder. "Lena Brooks." "I'm Ethan. Ethan Cole. We're going to get you warm, Lena. Everything else we'll figure out after." The wheelchair's footrest caught on something. Ethan couldn't see what through the rain, and the chair lurched sideways. Lena cried out, hands gripping the armrests as her weight shifted dangerously. "I've got you," Ethan said again, steadying the chair with one hand while his other arm wrapped around her shoulders. She was trembling so hard he could feel it through both their layers of wet clothing. Almost there. When they reached the truck, he realized the flaw in his rescue plan. His F-150 sat high off the ground, and Lena clearly couldn't walk. "I'm going to have to lift you," he said, meeting her eyes. "Is that okay?" She nodded, teeth chattering too hard for speech. Ethan had carried plenty of weight in his life. Equipment, supplies, his daughter when she fell asleep in the car. But Lena felt impossibly fragile as he lifted her from the wheelchair. She couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, all angles and trembling muscle. Her arm came around his neck, holding on with the grip of someone who'd learned not to trust solid ground. He settled her in the passenger seat, cranking the heat to maximum before jogging back for the wheelchair. It folded, thank God for small mercies, and he wrestled it into the truck bed, rain hammering his shoulders. Back in the cab, Ethan stripped off his soaked jacket and draped it over Lena's legs. She was still shaking, arms wrapped around herself, eyes closed as the warmth from the vents began to reach her. "Here." He dug behind the seat and found an old stadium blanket Maya had left from last season's soccer games. He tucked it around Lena's shoulders, careful not to startle her. "Better?" "Better," she managed, her eyes opened, finding his. "Your daughter. You said you were picking up your daughter." Ethan had forgotten he'd said that. He checked his phone again, still no signal, but the clock glared accusingly. 17 minutes until the daycare closed. "It's fine," he lied. "My neighbor picks her up sometimes. I'll call when we get somewhere with signal." "You're lying!" Despite her condition, Lena's voice held unexpected strength. "I can't let you be late because of me. Take me anywhere dry and go get your daughter. I'll wait." "You need medical attention." "I need to not die." Her hands emerged from the blanket, gripping the fabric like a lifeline. "They left me there to die, Ethan. My own family. And if you take me to a hospital or the police get involved before I can explain, they'll finish what they started." The words hung in the warm cab, shocking in their clarity and conviction. Ethan's investigator instincts, rusty from years of processing insurance claims instead of fraud cases, stirred to life. The scenario forming in his mind was horrific, but internally consistent. Vulnerable woman. Isolated location. No witnesses. Weather that would wash away evidence and make any story plausible. "How long were you out there?" he asked quietly. "I don't know." Lena's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Hours, maybe. I couldn't feel my hands after a while. Couldn't feel anything. I thought—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "I thought I was going to die watching car lights pass by on the highway above. None of them even looking down." Ethan thought of Maya, waiting at daycare. Thought of the risk he was taking, the complications he was inviting. Thought of what kind of man he wanted his daughter to learn to be, even if she was too young to know about this particular choice. "What's your address?" he asked. Lena blinked. "What?" "Your address. You said no hospital, no police, so I'm taking you home." "No!" The word came out panicked. That's where they... I can't go back there. Please, Ethan, anywhere but there. Then you're coming to my place. He put the truck in gear, making a careful three-point turn on the narrow road, just until we get you warm and dry and figure out what comes next. But Lana, he glanced at her, making sure she was listening. If this is something criminal, if someone's after you for reasons I can't help with, you need to tell me now. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I can't bring danger to her door. It's not like that. Lena's hands twisted the blanket. I'm not running from debt or drugs or anything like that. I'm running from inheritance and greed and people who thought killing me would be easier than sharing. That's all. They're not dangerous people, Ethan, just desperate, selfish ones. Desperate people are often the most dangerous. Then I'll leave as soon as I'm warm, I promise. I won't stay long enough to be a risk. Ethan drove in silence for a moment, windshield wipers beating their steady rhythm, heat finally pushing back the October chill. His mind was already working through the logistics. Get Lena somewhere safe and warm. Call Diane next door. She'd definitely be able to grab Maya from daycare. Get Lena's story. Decide what came next. Tell me about your family, he said. Lena's laugh was bitter. Which one? The one I was born into or the one that tried to kill me? Start with whoever left you in the rain. She was quiet for so long Ethan thought she might have fallen asleep. But when she spoke, her voice was steady, despite the trembling that still shook her frame. My father died 6 months ago. Robert Brooks. He was a good man, the best man I've ever known. When my mother died, I was 15. He remarried a year later to a woman named Vivian. She had a son from her first marriage, Tyler. He's 28 now. And you? 24. Ethan did the math. So you would have been around 16 when they came into your life. 16 and stupid enough to think I was getting a real family back. Lena's voice held old pain beneath fresh anger. Vivian was kind at first, attentive. She made my father happy, and that was enough for me. Tyler was away at college mostly, so I barely saw him. It wasn't perfect, but it was okay. Better than okay some days. What changed? My father got sick, pancreatic cancer. He fought it for a year, but we all knew how it would end. Her voice cracked. Before he died, he changed his will. I didn't know about it until the lawyer read it last month. Everything, the house, the investments, the insurance policies, it all went to me. Every penny. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing. How much are we talking about? $3.4 million? The number hung in the air like smoke. And your stepmother got nothing? She got $100,000. Tyler got $50,000. The house was to be mine, with the condition that they could live there until I turned 25, or they chose to leave, whichever came first. My birthday is in 3 weeks, so they'd have to leave soon regardless. Exactly. Lena pulled the blanket tighter. I told them I didn't care about the house. I'd give it to them. I just wanted to use some of the money for school, maybe help some disability advocacy groups. I didn't want to fight. But Vivian... She stopped, something crossing her face that looked like remembered fear. Vivian looked at me differently after that reading, like I'd stolen something that belonged to her, like I was an obstacle instead of a stepdaughter. They'd reached the edge of town, streetlights glowing through the rain like smudged stars. Ethan's neighborhood was modest, post-war houses with chain-link fences and 2-car garages, but it had good schools and better neighbors. He pulled into his driveway, next to the tricycle Maya had outgrown but refused to give up. "Why tonight?" he asked before turning off the engine. "Why would they try something now?" Lena's expression hardened. "Because tomorrow I have an appointment with my lawyer. I was going to change the will, put protections in place, make it harder for them to contest anything. Vivian knew. She asked about it yesterday at dinner, casual as anything. I should have lied." Ethan turned to face her fully. "Lena, what exactly happened tonight?" "We had dinner like normal, chicken and rice. I ate everything on my plate." She said it with the precision of someone recounting details to herself, testing them for sense. Around 7, I started feeling dizzy, sick to my stomach. I thought maybe I was coming down with something, so I went to lie down. But it got worse, fast. I couldn't think straight, couldn't stay awake. "Drugged," Ethan said flatly. "That's what I think now." At the time, I just remember waking up in my wheelchair, in the car, rain hitting the windshield. We were stopped. Tyler was driving. Vivian was in the passenger seat. I tried to ask what was happening, but my words weren't working right. What did they say? Nothing. Not to me. Tyler got out, opened the back door, and just wheeled me out. Into the rain. Into the middle of that road. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. Vivian looked back once. Our eyes met. And I knew, Ethan. I knew she was going to let me die there and tell everyone I'd wandered off in some kind of episode, that I'd been depressed since my father died, that they'd searched everywhere but the rain made it impossible to find me in time. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You're sure it was them? You weren't too out of it to be certain? I've known Tyler's voice since I was 16. I've known Vivian's face for 8 years. Lena's eyes met his, clear and certain despite the ordeal. It was them, and they meant for me to die. The rain hammered the truck's roof, a steady percussion that filled the silence. Ethan thought about his own daughter, safe with Mrs. Kowalski next door by now. Thought about what he'd tell Maya about this choice, years from now, when she was old enough to understand. Thought about whether he was being a hero or a fool. Okay, he said finally, let's get you inside. The house was quiet when they entered, the kind of silence that felt temporary, like it was only waiting for Maya to burst through with stories about her day and demands for snacks. Ethan carried Lena to the couch, leaving her wheelchair folded by the door. I'm going to call my neighbor, he said, already pulling out his phone. Get you some dry clothes, then we're going to talk about what comes next. Lena nodded, still wrapped in the stadium blanket, looking impossibly small against his worn furniture. Diane Kowalski answered on the second ring. Ethan, where are you? I saw the daycare called 3 times. I know, I'm sorry. There was an emergency. Can you... Already got her. Maya's having dinosaur nuggets and telling me about the butterfly they found at recess. Diane's voice softened. Everything okay? Long story. I'll explain tomorrow. Thank you, Diane. Seriously. She can sleep here if you need. Just let me know. I'll pick her up in an hour. He hung up and found Lena watching him with an expression he couldn't quite name. You don't have to do this, she said quietly, any of this. You can call the police right now and wash your hands of the whole mess. You asked me not to. I'm asking you to reconsider, because helping me might cost you more than you think. Ethan sat down in the chair across from her, elbows on his knees, studying the young woman who'd appeared in his headlights like an answered prayer he hadn't known to say. 3 years ago, he said slowly, my wife died in a car accident. Drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. 1 minute I had a partner, and the next I had an empty side of the bed and a daughter asking when mommy was coming home. He paused, letting the words settle. For 6 months, I barely functioned. Work, daycare, dinner, bed, repeat. I felt like I was moving through water, everything slow and heavy. And then one day, Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down showed up with groceries I hadn't asked for and stayed to help Maya with her homework while I slept for the first time in weeks. Lena's expression had softened, understanding beginning to dawn. She told me later that she'd lost her husband young, too, that she knew what drowning looked like, that sometimes being saved looks like a casserole and sometimes it looks like showing up. Ethan met Lena's eyes. You showed up in my headlights tonight. I don't think that's an accident, and I don't think walking away is the right answer, whatever it costs. What if it costs you your daughter? Then I'll have made a mistake, but walking past someone in trouble, that would cost me something I can't get back. And Maya's going to grow up watching what I do more than listening to what I say. I want her to learn that you stop for people, even when it's complicated, even when it's scary, especially then. Lena's eyes filled with tears that had nothing to do with the cold. I don't know what to say. Say you'll tell me the whole truth, no matter how bad it is. Say you'll trust me to help you figure this out. Ethan stood, moving toward the hallway. And say your size so I can find you something warm to wear. Small, Lena said, voice barely steady. Everything's always small. Ethan returned with sweatpants, a thermal shirt, and thick socks. all Maya's size from before the growth spurt that had turned his daughter into all legs and elbows. He helped Lena to the bathroom, waiting outside while she changed, ready if she needed assistance but respecting her need for dignity. When she emerged, dry and warmer, some color had returned to her face. She looked younger somehow, and simultaneously older, like the kind of person who'd learned too much too fast. They settled back in the living room. Ethan made tea, the kind of domestic ritual that felt absurd given the circumstances, but necessary for what was coming. "Start from the beginning," he said, handing her a mug. "Tell me everything about tonight." Lena wrapped her hands around the warmth, staring into the steam as if it held answers. Dinner was at 6:30. Vivian made chicken, garlic and lemon, the way my father used to like it. She was being nice. Too nice. Asking about my day, talking about maybe taking a trip together in November. I thought maybe we were finally moving past the will thing, that she'd accepted it. But nothing tasted quite right. Not bad, just off. I didn't think anything of it because sometimes Vivian experiments with recipes. I finished my plate because she'd gone to the trouble of cooking. I always finish my plate. She said it with the weight of old training, the kind that came from parents teaching gratitude. "What time did you start feeling sick?" "Maybe 45 minutes after dinner. I was in my room, reading. The dizziness hit first, like the room was tilting, then nausea, this wave of it that wouldn't stop. I tried to get to the bathroom, but my arms weren't working right. The wheelchair..." She gestured vaguely. "I'm not paralyzed or anything. I have cerebral palsy. Some days are better than others. That night before I even felt sick, I'd been using the chair because my legs were tired. Lucky, I guess, that I was already in it." "So you called for help?" I tried, but my voice wasn't working right either. Everything was going fuzzy. The next thing I remember clearly is being in the car, rain everywhere, and this feeling of being trapped in my own body. I could see and hear, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Just aware enough to know something terrible was happening. Ethan set down his tea, his investigator's mind assembling pieces. "Did they say anything in the car? Anything at all?" Lena's face went still, that 1,000-yard stare of someone replaying trauma. Tyler said, "How long?" And Vivian said, "Another hour, maybe 2. The cold will do most of the work." That's when I understood. That's when I knew they weren't taking me to a hospital. "Where did they leave you?" "Old Route 9, about 3 miles south of the highway junction. There's nothing out there. No houses, no businesses, just trees and that road that barely anyone uses anymore. They must have chosen it specifically." "And after they left you there?" "I sat there," Lena said simply. "I couldn't move the wheelchair, couldn't even try. Whatever they gave me was still working. All I could do was wait and hope the cold took me before I could feel it. I watched car lights on the highway overpass. So many of them, all those people heading home, and none of them could see me. I thought about my father, wondered if he'd be ashamed of me for not fighting harder, and then I thought about how tired I was and how much easier it would be to just close my eyes. But you didn't." "No." Her voice strengthened. "Because I kept thinking about what they'd get away with. The money, yes, but more than that, they'd get to act like victims. Poor Vivian and Tyler, losing another family member so tragically. They'd mourn at my funeral and sell my father's house and live off the inheritance like it was always meant for them. And that made me so angry, I couldn't die. I wouldn't give them that." Ethan stood, pacing to the window. Rain still came down in sheets, washing the world clean and making it impossible to see anything clearly. His own reflection stared back at him, 41 years old, premature gray at his temples, exhaustion in the set of his shoulders. A man who'd become an expert in being careful, in avoiding risk, in keeping his daughter safe through predictability. And here he was, harboring a woman who'd just accused her family of attempted murder, with nothing but her word and his gut to guide him. "What do you want to happen now?" he asked. Lena looked at him like he'd asked her to solve quantum physics. "I want them arrested. I want the truth to come out. I want..." She stopped, shoulders sagging. "I want proof." "But there isn't any, is there? The rain washed away tire tracks. The drugs are probably out of my system by now, and even if they're not, I don't have a reason to get tested that wouldn't involve police and questions, and my word against theirs. They left you on a road, in a wheelchair, in a storm. Ethan turned from the window. That's evidence of something, even if the weather complicated it. Evidence of what? That I went for a roll and got turned around? That I had an episode and didn't know where I was? Lena's voice turned bitter. I have cerebral palsy, Ethan. People make assumptions. They'll assume I was confused, that my family was searching frantically, that this was all some tragic misunderstanding, and Vivian, she's smart. She'll cry beautifully at all the right moments. Tyler will play the devoted stepbrother. They'll have practiced their story during the drive home. She wasn't wrong. Ethan had seen enough insurance fraud cases to know how easily people could manipulate sympathy, how quickly assumptions filled gaps in logic. What about your lawyer? He asked. The appointment tomorrow. They might not know you've survived yet. If we can get you there safely, get the will protections in place, and then what? I hide forever? Wait for them to try again? Lena shook her head. I can't live like that. I won't. Ethan sat back down, leaning forward. Then we build a case. A real one. We find proof they were lying about their whereabouts tonight. We find evidence of the drugs they used. We make it impossible for anyone to write this off as an accident or confusion. How? I used to investigate insurance fraud. Before... He gestured vaguely, meaning before the accident, before everything changed. I was good at it. Found patterns, inconsistencies, proof when people thought they'd covered their tracks. It's been a while, but I still remember how to look. Why would you do that? Lena's eyes searched his face. You don't know me. You have your daughter to think about. This isn't your problem. It became my problem the moment my headlights caught you in the rain. Ethan's voice was firm. And maybe you're right. Maybe this is stupid. Maybe I should take you straight to the police and let them sort it out. But something tells me you wouldn't have begged me not to if you didn't have a reason to believe they'd fail you. So we do this the right way. We find proof, and then we make sure nobody can ignore what happened. Lena studied him for a long moment, this stranger who'd stopped when others passed by, who'd listened when he could have dismissed, who was offering help when he had every reason to walk away. Okay, she whispered. Okay. But if this gets too dangerous, if it starts affecting your daughter, then we'll reevaluate, but not before we try. A knock at the door made them both jump. Ethan stood, moving to the window to peer out. Mrs. Kowalski stood on the porch, Maya bouncing beside her, already in pajamas. She insisted, Diane called through the door. Wanted to make sure you were okay. Ethan glanced back at Lena. You okay with meeting my daughter? Does she know, Nothing, just that I had to help someone. He moved to open the door, Maya immediately launching herself at his legs. Daddy, Mrs. Kowalski made chocolate milk with the good syrup. Did she? Ethan scooped his daughter up, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. What do we say? Thank you, Mrs. Kowalski, Maya called over his shoulder. Diane smiled, eyes curious but kind as they flickered past Ethan to where Lena sat on the couch. Anytime, sweetheart. Ethan, if you need anything, I'll let you know. Thanks, Diane. He closed the door, setting Maya down. She immediately spotted Lena and approached with the fearless curiosity of childhood. Hi, I'm Maya. Are you my dad's friend? Lena's expression transformed, softening into something genuine. Hi, Maya. I'm Lena. I guess I am your dad's friend. Is that okay? Do you like dinosaurs? I do, actually. T-Rex is my favorite. Maya's eyes went wide. Mine too. Did you know they couldn't run fast, but they could bite through a car? I didn't know that. That's amazing. Ethan watched them, this moment of normalcy threading through the chaos, and felt something shift in his chest. The risk he was taking felt less theoretical when his daughter was involved. But looking at Lena, really looking at her, seeing the person beyond the crisis, he couldn't regret the choice. Maya, Lena's going to stay with us for a little while, he said carefully. She needs a safe place to rest. Think you can help make her feel welcome? We can share my room, Maya announced immediately. I have bunk beds and everything. Actually, sweetie, Lena's going to use the guest room, but maybe you can show her your dinosaur collection tomorrow? Okay. Maya grabbed Lena's hand with the unconscious affection of a child who'd never learned to fear strangers. Do you want to see them now? I have a Brachiosaurus that's this big. Maya, bedtime, Ethan interrupted gently. You can show Lena everything tomorrow. Say goodnight. Good night, Lena. I'm glad you're here. Me too, Lena said, voice thick with emotion she was trying to hide. Good night, Maya. Ethan carried his daughter to bed, going through their nightly ritual of toothbrushing and story reading and checking under the bed for monsters that didn't exist. When he finally kissed her forehead and turned out the light, Maya's sleepy voice stopped him at the door. Daddy? Is your friend sad? He turned. What makes you think that? Her eyes, they looked like yours did after Mommy left, like she lost something big. The observation hit Ethan square in the chest. His 7-year-old daughter already learning to read grief in strangers' faces. Yeah, baby, she is sad. Is, but we're going to help her feel better, okay? Okay. Love you, Daddy. Love you more. He returned to the living room to find Lena crying quietly, hands pressed to her face. I'm sorry, she managed. Your daughter, she's just perfect, Ethan offered, sitting down. Yeah, I know. She gets that from her mother. Lena lowered her hands, wiping her eyes. She's lucky to have you. Some days I'm not sure about that. Most days I feel like I'm one mistake away from screwing her up permanently. You stopped for me, Lena said simply. In the rain, when you were already late, when you had every reason not to. That tells me everything about what kind of father you are. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. We should figure out sleeping arrangements. The guest room's clean, but I'll need to grab some sheets from the hall closet. Ethan, Lena's voice stopped him. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow you have a lawyer's appointment to keep, and I have some calls to make to people who owe me favors. We start building your case brick by brick. What if we can't find proof? Then we find doubt. We find enough questions about their story that the truth becomes unavoidable. He met her eyes. Trust me, Lena. People who do something this calculated always leave traces. Always. We just have to know where to look. She nodded slowly, exhaustion finally catching up with the adrenaline. I don't know how to thank you. Stay alive, Ethan said. That's thanks enough. He helped her to the guest room, making sure she had everything she needed. Water, extra blankets, his phone number programmed into the house phone in case she needed him in the night. When he finally retreated to his own room, the house quiet around him, Ethan stood at his window watching rain still coming down. Somewhere out there, 2 people thought they'd gotten away with murder, thought the rain had washed away their crime, that the cold had finished their work, that an inheritance was finally, fully theirs. They were wrong. And tomorrow, Ethan Cole, widowed father, former fraud investigator, man who'd learned the hard way that life could change in a heartbeat, was going to start proving it. He pulled out his phone, opening a note file he hadn't touched in years. At the top, he typed, Lena Brooks case. Below that, he began listing questions. Where exactly on Route 9? What drug could cause those symptoms? Who would have access? What's the timeline from dinner to abandonment? What did Vivian and Tyler do after? Where are they now? The list grew, each question spawning 3 more. His investigator's mind, dormant for so long, stirred fully awake. Ethan thought about his wife, gone 3 years but still present in the choices he made. She'd have stopped too. She'd have brought Lena home. She'd have said that Maya needed to grow up believing the world held more helpers than hurters. I hope I'm doing this right, he whispered to the rain, to the memory, to the universe that had put a dying woman in his path. No answer came, but then he hadn't really expected one. In the guest room, Lena Brooks lay awake in a stranger's house, warm and dry and alive when she should have been neither. She thought about her father, who'd loved her enough to protect her even after death, thought about Vivian and Tyler, who'd loved money more than the life it came attached to, and she thought about Ethan Cole, who'd stopped in the rain. Tomorrow she'd face her lawyer, her fear, her family's lies. Tomorrow she'd start fighting back. But tonight, for the first time in months, maybe years, Lena felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. It was fragile and uncertain, built on nothing more than a stranger's kindness and the conviction that truth mattered more than comfort. But it was there. And sometimes, Hope was enough to start with. Outside, the rain began to ease, the storm passing as storms always did. But its work was done. It had washed away evidence, yes, but it had also brought two people together who needed each other more than either yet understood. In the morning, the real work would begin. For now, there was only silence, safety, and the quiet promise of dawn. Morning came too early and not soon enough. Ethan woke at 6 to find his phone already buzzing with messages. Work emails, Maya's school reminders, a text from Diane asking if everything was okay. He responded to none of them yet, instead padding quietly down the hall to check on Lena. The guest room door was cracked open. Inside, she sat upright in bed, still wearing his borrowed clothes, staring at her hands like they held answers she couldn't quite read. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly from the doorway. Lena's head jerked up, startled, then relaxed when she recognized him. "I kept dreaming I was still in the rain. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that wheelchair, watching cars pass on the highway." She paused. "How do you do this? Move forward when your brain keeps dragging you backward?" Ethan leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "You tell yourself that surviving isn't the same as living, and you choose every day to do the harder thing. Did that work for you, after your wife?" "Eventually. Some days better than others." He straightened. "Your lawyer appointment is at 10. We should talk strategy first. Coffee?" "God, yes." 20 minutes later, they sat at Ethan's kitchen table, steam rising from mismatched mugs while Maya consumed cereal with the single-minded focus of childhood. The normalcy of the scene felt surreal against what they were planning. "So the lawyer," Ethan began, keeping his voice low enough that Maya wouldn't really register the conversation. "Edward Chen, you said?" "Edward Chen of Chen and Associates. He handled my father's estate. He's good, thorough, but I don't know if he'll believe me about last night." Lena wrapped both hands around her mug. "I barely believe it myself." "You don't need him to believe you yet. You just need him to implement the protections you planned. Change the will, add safeguards, whatever you were going to do anyway. And Vivian? She'll know I survive when I don't show up dead." "She already knows." Ethan pulled out his phone, showing Lena a news alert he'd found earlier. "Local woman reported missing by family. Lena Brooks, age 24, last seen leaving her home around 8 p.m. Family fears she may have gotten disoriented in the storm." Lena's face went pale as she read the report. "They called it in already. They're already spinning the story." "Which means they're also already worried. They don't know what happened to you, where you are, whether you can contradict their version. That uncertainty is leverage." "Daddy, what's leverage?" Maya piped up, milk mustache firmly in place. "It's like when you want extra dessert, so you offer to clean your room without being asked," Ethan improvised. "You're giving the other person a reason to listen. That's manipulation," Maya announced with 7-year-old certainty. "Sometimes manipulation and negotiation look pretty similar, kiddo." Ethan ruffled her hair. "Go brush your teeth. Bus comes in 15. As Maya disappeared down the hall, Lena's expression shifted to something Ethan couldn't quite identify. "You're really good at that, making the hard stuff sound simple for her." "I've had practice." He turned back to business. "Here's what I'm thinking. We get you to Chen's office safely. You make your changes. While you're doing that, I make some calls. I still have contacts from my investigator days, people who can pull records, check timelines, find inconsistencies." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Your stepmother and stepbrother had to come home after leaving you. They had to account for their time somehow. If they said they were searching for you all night, someone might have seen them. Security cameras, toll booths, gas station receipts. Nobody vanishes completely anymore, Lena. There's always a trail." She studied him over the rim of her coffee. "Why are you so calm about this?" "Because panic doesn't solve problems. Information does." Ethan's voice was steady, the investigator in him fully awake now. "And because I've been too careful for too long. Maybe it's time I used what I know to help someone who actually needs it." The school bus rumbled up outside right on schedule. Ethan walked Maya to the door, lunchbox in hand, her backpack covered in dinosaur patches. "Daddy, is Lena still going to be here when I get home?" "I think so, yeah. Why?" "Just wondering." Maya hugged him quickly. Love you. Love you more. He watched her bored, that familiar clutch of anxiety as she disappeared from view. Every parent's fear, every widower's double helping. But this morning felt different somehow. Like stopping for Lena had reminded him that protection and paralysis weren't the same thing. Back inside, Lena was standing, testing her legs with careful weight shifts. I need to change. I can't show up to my lawyer's office in borrowed sweatpants. We'll stop by your house first, quick in and out. Ethan, they might be there. Then we'll handle it. But you need clothes, you probably need medications, and honestly, I want to see their faces when you walk through that door alive. Lena's expression flickered between fear and something harder. You want to shake them up. See how they react. Information, remember? Their reactions will tell us everything about what they did and how guilty they feel about it. And if they try something? Ethan met her eyes. They won't. Not in broad daylight with a witness. People like Vivian and Tyler, they're opportunists. They needed the storm and the isolation and your vulnerability. Take any of those away, and they're just two people who got caught. You don't know that for sure? No, but I'm willing to bet on it. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a house that could have been lifted from a magazine spread. Colonial revival, white columns, perfectly manicured lawn despite the autumn weather. Money whispered from every architectural detail. This is where you grew up? Ethan asked. This is where my father's money lived, Lena corrected. I grew up in a house about half this size before my mother died. Dad bought this place when he married Vivian. I think he wanted to give her something grand, prove he could provide. Did it work? For a while. Lena's hands twisted in her lap, until she realized how much more grand it could be with me out of the picture. Two cars sat in the driveway, a Mercedes SUV and a BMW sedan, both gleaming, both expensive, both very present. They're home, Lena whispered. Good. Ethan put the truck in park. Let's go remind them what a mistake they made. Walking up that pristine path felt like approaching enemy territory. Ethan stayed close to Lena, one hand ready to catch her elbow if she needed support, though her steps seemed steadier this morning. Anger, he'd learned, could be better fuel than hope sometimes. Lena used her key. The door swung open to reveal hardwood floors and the kind of studied elegance that came from interior designers rather than living. Classical music drifted from somewhere deeper in the house. Vivian? Lena called out, her voice remarkably steady. Tyler? I'm home. The music cut off abruptly. Footsteps approached, heels on hardwood, rapid and sharp. Then a woman appeared in the doorway to what looked like a sitting room, and Ethan understood immediately why Lena's father had fallen for her. Vivian Brooks was beautiful in the way that required maintenance. Mid-50s, blonde hair styled perfectly, wearing slacks and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage. Her face was currently cycling through expressions faster than she could control them. Shock, fear, relief, calculation. Lena. The name came out strangled. Oh my God, Lena, we've been worried sick. Where have you been? We called the police. We've been searching. She moved forward as if to embrace her stepdaughter. Ethan stepped slightly in front of Lena, his presence suddenly impossible to ignore. Vivian's eyes cut to him, reassessing. Who are you? Ethan Cole. I'm the one who found Lena last night on Route 9, in the rain, in her wheelchair, barely conscious. His voice was pleasant, conversational, and absolutely unyielding. Interesting that you were searching everywhere except where she actually was. Something flickered in Vivian's eyes, dangerous and quick, but her face arranged itself into perfect maternal concern. Route 9? That's miles from here. How on earth did you end up there, sweetheart? We thought you'd just gone out for some air, that you'd gotten turned around near the park. Funny thing about that, Lena said, and Ethan heard steel in her voice he hadn't heard before. I don't remember going out for air. I remember having dinner with you. I remember getting sick. And I remember waking up in a car with Tyler driving and you in the passenger seat. I remember you watching him wheel me out into that storm. I remember everything, Vivian. The silence that followed was profound. A man emerged from the same doorway Vivian had appeared from, 28, athletic build, expensive casual clothes, and eyes currently wide with something that looked a lot like panic. Tyler, Ethan said pleasantly. Good. Saves us from having this conversation twice. I don't know what she told you, Tyler started, voice too loud, too defensive, but my sister has episodes sometimes, gets confused, the cerebral palsy. It affects her perception of don't. Lena's single word cut through his explanation like a blade. Don't you dare use my disability as an excuse for what you did. I was drugged, Tyler. Probably something slipped into my dinner. I was conscious enough to hear you ask Vivian how long. Conscious enough to hear her say the cold would do the work for you. Vivian's face had gone very still, that practiced neutrality of someone who knew they were being watched. Lena, honey, you're clearly still confused from whatever happened last night. Why don't we get you checked out by a doctor? Make sure... Why don't we call the police instead? Ethan suggested. Let them sort out who's confused and who's lying. Who the hell are you to come into our home making accusations? Tyler took a step forward, aggression rolling off him in waves. Ethan didn't move. I'm the person who kept your attempted murder from succeeding. I'm also the person who spent 12 years investigating fraud before I switched careers. I know what guilt looks like, Tyler. I know what panic sounds like. And right now, both of you are screaming it. Get out! Vivian's voice had lost all pretense of warmth. Get out of my house, or I'm calling the police myself. Your house? Lena's laugh was bitter. This house belongs to me. Check the will, Vivian. Check the deed. You've been living in my house for 6 months, and in 3 weeks, I don't have to let you stay anymore. The mask cracked completely. Vivian's beautiful face twisted into something ugly. You ungrateful little... Careful, Ethan warned softly. Threats in front of witnesses tend to age poorly. Vivian closed her mouth, visibly regaining control. When she spoke again, her tone was ice. You can't prove anything. Whatever you think happened last night, whatever story you've concocted with this stranger, you have no evidence, no proof, nothing but the confused recollections of a disabled girl who got lost in a storm. Actually, Lena said quietly, I have a witness who can testify to my condition when he found me. I have the clothes I was wearing, still damp, that can be tested for whatever you drugged me with. And I have the fact that you reported me missing before you could possibly have known I was gone. How did you know to call the police about someone who supposedly just went for air? The question hung there, sharp and damning. Tyler and Vivian exchanged a glance, fast but telling. We came to check on you, Tyler tried. You weren't in your room. We looked for hours before calling. What time did you call? Ethan asked. Around 11, maybe, midnight? The report says 10:30. I checked. Ethan pulled out his phone, showing the timestamp. You called in a missing person 90 minutes after you claim you put her to bed. That's not hours of searching, Tyler. That's barely enough time to drive back from Route 9. The silence was damning. Vivian recovered first, as Ethan suspected she would. She was the planner, the strategist. Tyler was just the muscle. This is ridiculous. We're her family. We were worried. Whatever timestamp some police report shows doesn't change the fact that Lena clearly needs help. Medical help, psychological help. What I need, Lena interrupted, is to get some clothes and my medication and get to my lawyer's office. You two can stay here and practice your story. You're going to need it when the police start asking real questions. She moved past them toward the stairs, Ethan following, leaving Vivian and Tyler standing in shocked silence. Lena's room was on the second floor, down a hallway lined with family photos that probably meant nothing anymore. Inside it was surprisingly sparse: bed, desk, bookshelf, wheelchair parked by the window. The room of someone who'd learned not to get too comfortable. Grab what you need, Ethan said quietly, positioning himself by the door. Quick as you can. Lena moved efficiently, pulling clothes from drawers, collecting pill bottles from her nightstand. Her hands shook slightly, but her movements were determined. Footsteps on the stairs made them both freeze. Vivian appeared in the doorway, alone this time, her expression carefully composed. Lena, please, can we talk, just the two of us? Anything you want to say, you can say in front of Ethan. Fine. Vivian stepped into the room, and Ethan was struck by how calculated the movement was. She was positioning herself between Lena and the door, he realized. Subtle, but deliberate. You're right. I was angry about the will. I thought I deserved more, that Robert should have considered everything I'd done for him, for you, these past 8 years. But that doesn't mean I'd ever... She stopped, perfect tears forming. I would never hurt you, Lena. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything. Lena zipped her bag. I was there, Vivian. I heard you. I saw your face when Tyler wheeled me out of that car. You weren't planning to search for me. You were planning to mourn me. You were confused. The storm, the medication you take for your condition. I wasn't on any medication that would cause confusion, and you know it. Lena's voice was rising despite her obvious effort to stay calm. Stop lying. Stop pretending. Just stop. Or what? Vivian's tears vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. You'll go to the police with your story? They'll investigate, find nothing, and then what? You'll have destroyed this family over paranoid delusions. Is that what your father would have wanted? My father would have wanted me alive, Lena shot back. That's why he left everything to me. He knew exactly who you were, Vivian. Maybe he always knew. The slap came so fast Ethan almost didn't catch it in time. His hand shot out, catching Vivian's wrist inches from Lena's face. The grip was firm but controlled, the hold of someone who'd learned how to stop violence without causing it. Bad idea, he said quietly. Vivian wrenched her arm away, her composure finally fully shattered. You have no right to interfere with family business. Attempted murder isn't family business. It's crime, and I have every right to protect someone asking for help. Ethan released her, stepping protectively closer to Lena. We're leaving now. And Vivian? Every word you've said, every threat you've implied, every time you've tried to gaslight Lena about what happened, I'm remembering all of it. So when the police do start asking questions, there's going to be a very detailed statement about this conversation. Get out of my house. Gladly. They left Vivian standing in Lena's room, fury radiating from her like heat. Tyler waited at the bottom of the stairs, his expression unreadable, but his hands clenched into fists. Lena? He called as they reached the door. You're making a mistake. We're family. Lena paused, hand on the doorknob, and turned back. Family doesn't leave each other in the rain to die. Whatever we were, Tyler, it died last night on Route 9. And the fact that you can't even admit what you did makes it worse. They walked out into morning sunshine that felt impossibly bright after the darkness of that house. Ethan helped Lena into the truck, her hands trembling now with adrenaline crash. Neither of them spoke until they were 3 blocks away. That was... Lena started. Stupid? Ethan offered. Reckless? I was going to say necessary. She looked at him, something like gratitude and wonder mixed in her expression. You caught her hand before she could hit me. Reflex. No, choice. Lena's voice was soft. Thank you. They drove in silence for a moment before Ethan spoke again. They're scared, really scared. That's useful. How? Scared people make mistakes. They rush, they overcompensate. They say things they shouldn't say and do things that leave traces. He glanced at her. Vivian almost hit you in front of a witness. Tyler was ready to get physical. That's not the behavior of people confident in their innocence. But they were right about one thing. I can't prove anything yet. Yet, Ethan agreed. But we will. Because here's what I know about people like Vivian and Tyler. They think they're smarter than everyone else. They think money and planning equal untouchable. But they left you on a road, Lena. A specific road at a specific time. That's geography, timeline, opportunity, all things that leave evidence. Where do we start? Ethan pulled into a parking lot, putting the truck in park so he could look at her fully. We start with your lawyer. We protect your assets, your will, everything they were trying to steal. Then we start building the criminal case. I've got calls to make. Old colleagues who owe me favors. People who can pull traffic camera footage, check pharmacy records for who might have bought the drugs they used, trace cell phone locations. We methodically build a timeline that makes their story impossible. That sounds expensive. Then it's good you're about to inherit $3 million. He said it without judgment, just fact. Money meant to take care of you, protect you, give you options. Use it for that. Use it to make sure they never get a chance to try this again. Lena nodded slowly. Okay, yes. Let's do it right. They arrived at Chen and Associates 15 minutes early. The office was professional, but not ostentatious. Brick building, tasteful signage, the kind of place that dealt with serious money without needing to advertise it. "You want me to come in with you?" Ethan asked. "Yes, please." Lena's hand found his. "I don't want to do this alone." Edward Chen was exactly what Ethan expected. 60-ish, sharp suit, sharper eyes. He ushered them into his office with professional courtesy that shifted to concern when he actually looked at Lena. "Miss Brooks, your family reported you missing. Are you all right?" "That depends on your definition," Lena said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Mr. Chen, I need to make significant changes to my father's will, immediately." "Changes? We just finalized." "I'm aware, but circumstances have evolved." She glanced at Ethan, drawing strength, then back to Chen. "My stepmother and stepbrother attempted to kill me last night. I survived. And now I need to make absolutely certain that if they try again and succeed, they get nothing." Chen's expression remained professionally neutral, but Ethan caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. "Those are serious accusations, Miss Brooks." "They're serious facts, Mr. Chen." Lena's voice was steady. "This is Ethan Cole. He's the one who found me abandoned on Route 9 in the middle of last night's storm. He can corroborate my condition." Chen's gaze shifted to Ethan, assessing. "And you are?" "A concerned citizen who happened to take a wrong turn at the right time." Ethan leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, I used to investigate insurance fraud. I know how to read situations, how to spot inconsistencies. And everything about Lena's account checks out. Her physical condition when I found her, the timeline of her family's police report, their behavior this morning when we retrieved her belongings. These people tried to murder her for money. Now we need to make sure that money is permanently out of their reach." Chen was quiet for a long moment, fingers steepled, clearly weighing liability and ethics and belief. Finally, he nodded. "What specific changes do you want to make?" "Everything goes to charity if I die under suspicious circumstances," Lena said immediately. "Medical research, disability advocacy, anything. But Vivian and Tyler Brooks get nothing, not a penny, not the house, nothing." "That's fairly easy to implement. What else?" "I want a formal investigation clause. If I die within the next 5 years under any circumstances that could be considered questionable, a percentage of the estate goes to hiring private investigators and attorneys to find the truth. Make it expensive for them to get away with it." Chen's eyebrows rose. "That's unusually aggressive." "These are unusual circumstances." Lena's voice didn't waver. "Can you do it?" "I can draft it. It'll need to be airtight from a legal standpoint, which means we're looking at a few days for proper documentation." "Days we might not have," Ethan interjected. "Is there any way to implement an emergency interim protection? Something that goes into effect immediately while the full documentation is prepared?" Chen considered. "I could draft a codicil. It wouldn't be as comprehensive, but it would establish intent and modify the immediate terms. Combined with my testimony about this meeting and your concerns," he looked at Lena, "it would at least create legal complexity if something were to happen to you." "Do it," Lena said. "Whatever it takes." For the next hour, Chen walked them through documents and clauses and legal protections that felt simultaneously paranoid and entirely necessary. Ethan watched Lena sign page after page, her signature growing stronger with each one, like every mark on paper was armor she was building around herself. When they finally left Chen's office, the sun was high and the world felt different somehow, more solid, more real. "That's step one," Ethan said as they reached the truck. "Now comes the hard part. Building the case against them? Living while we do it, because Lena, they're not going to just accept this. When they find out you've changed the will, when they realize you're serious about fighting back," he stopped, making sure she was listening. "They're going to escalate or they're going to run. Either way, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So what do we do?" Ethan unlocked the truck, his mind already 3 moves ahead. "We stay smart, we document everything, we don't give them any opportunities to claim harassment or make you look unstable, and we trust that the truth always leaves traces." His phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Everything okay? Maya's been asking about your friend." He showed it to Lena. "Speaking of which, you're about to get a lot of questions from a very curious 7-year-old. Think you can handle that?" Lena's smile was tired but genuine. After this morning, a 7-year-old sounds perfect. They drove back through town, past the ordinary Tuesday morning of a place that had no idea what darkness hid behind colonial columns and Mercedes SUVs. Ethan thought about evidence and timelines and the calls he'd start making this afternoon to people who knew how to find truth in lies. But mostly he thought about the woman in his passenger seat who'd survived death and was choosing to fight instead of hide. Ethan? Lena's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Yeah? When this is over, when we've proven what they did and they're in prison and I can finally breathe again, I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying forward what you did. Stopping for people. Helping when it's complicated. Being the kind of person who doesn't drive past someone in the rain. You were always that person, Lena. You just needed a reminder. Maybe we both did. They pulled into Ethan's driveway to find Mrs. Kowalski waiting on the porch, concern written across her face. Ethan, there were people here looking for you, a woman and a man asking about last night, whether you'd seen anyone, whether anyone strange was staying with you. She glanced at Lena, understanding dawning. I told them I hadn't seen anything. Was that right? That was perfect, Diane. Thank you. After she left, Lena turned to him. They're looking for me already, trying to figure out where I am. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Every moment they spend scared is a moment they're not thinking clearly. Ethan helped her out of the truck. Come on, we've got work to do before Maya gets home, and I make a pretty decent grilled cheese if you're hungry. Inside, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of a single father's home, they began the real work. Ethan pulled out his laptop, starting lists and timelines and maps. Lena called Chen's office to confirm the codicil was filed. They moved around each other like partners in a dance they were learning, finding rhythm and shared purpose. Around 3, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello? Mr. Cole? Vivian's voice was smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. We need to talk about Lena, about what's best for her. I think Lena's pretty clear on what's best for her, and it's not you. You're interfering in family matters you don't understand. My stepdaughter is vulnerable, confused. She needs professional help, not vigilante justice from a stranger with a hero complex. Ethan put the phone on speaker so Lena could hear. Tell me something, Vivian. When you called in that missing person report last night, did you mention Route 9? Did you tell them where to search? Brief pause. We didn't know where she was. That's why we called it in. Right, you didn't know. So you couldn't have told them to check that specific road, which means when they find my truck's GPS data showing me on that road at the exact time I found Lena and they match it with your timeline, well, that's going to raise some interesting questions, isn't it? The silence on the other end was profound. Stay away from Lena, Vivian said finally, all pretense of civility gone. Stay away from our family, or you'll regret it. Is that a threat? Because I'm recording this conversation, and threats tend to sound really damning in court. The line went dead. Lena stared at him. Were you really recording? No, but she doesn't know that. Ethan saved the number. And now we have her making implied threats. Add it to the pile. The pile of circumstantial evidence that might not mean anything? Every brick matters when you're building a wall, Lena. Trust me. The afternoon dissolved into research and phone calls and the slow, methodical work of building a case. Ethan reached out to an old colleague who now worked as a private investigator, another friend in the DA's office, a tech specialist who owed him a favor from a case 5 years back. Each call was a piece. Each promise of help was another brick. When Maya's bus pulled up, Lena was setting the table for dinner, moving through Ethan's kitchen like she belonged there. The domesticity of it hit him sideways. How quickly catastrophe could create intimacy, how helping someone could start to feel like family. Maya burst through the door with her usual energy, immediately spotting Lena. You're still here. Dad said you might be. Did you see my dinosaurs yet? Are you staying for dinner? We're having tacos. Do you like tacos? I love tacos, Lena said, and the smile on her face was the first one Ethan had seen that reached her eyes. And yes, I'd love to see your dinosaurs. As Maya dragged Lena off to her room for the promised tour, Ethan stood in his kitchen, listening to his daughter's chatter and Lena's soft responses. and felt something shift in his chest. 3 years of careful living. 3 years of protecting Maya from anything that might hurt or complicate or risk the fragile stability they'd built. And here he was, harboring a woman whose family had tried to kill her, building a case that could turn dangerous, inviting complexity into every corner of their lives. His wife would have done the same thing. She'd have stopped in the rain too. The thought brought pain and comfort in equal measure. That night, after Maya was asleep and Lena had retreated to the guest room, Ethan sat at his laptop, studying the map of Route 9. There had to be cameras somewhere along that stretch. Gas stations, traffic monitors, something that could prove Vivian and Tyler's car had been there. His phone buzzed. Text from his PI friend. Got something. Call me. Ethan stepped outside so he wouldn't wake anyone. Tom, what did you find? Gas station 3 miles from where you said you found her. Has cameras. I sweet-talked the owner into letting me review last night's footage. Tom's voice held satisfaction. Black BMW sedan, license plate matching Tyler Brooks's registration, stopped there at 9:47 p.m. Purchased gas and 2 bottles of water. Both occupants visible on camera, Vivian Brooks and Tyler Brooks. Timestamp puts them exactly where they shouldn't have been if their story was true. Ethan's heart kicked up. Can you get me a copy of that footage? Already done. Sending it encrypted. But Ethan, there's something else. The time they were there, that's right after you'd have found the girl, based on your timeline. They stopped for gas on their way back home. They were calm, no urgency, no panic, like people who just completed a task, not people frantically searching for a missing family member. That's perfect. That's exactly what we needed. There's more. I pulled Tyler's cell phone records. You'll need a warrant to use them officially, but off the record. His phone pinged towers near Route 9 between 9 and 9:30. Then went dark, like he turned it off. Then pinged back on near their house around 10:15, right before they called in the missing person report. Evidence. Real, tangible, provable evidence. Tom, I could kiss you. Buy me a beer instead. And Ethan, be careful. People who try to kill once don't usually stop just because it didn't work the first time. After they hung up, Ethan stood in his backyard looking up at stars barely visible through suburban light pollution and felt the case coming together like puzzle pieces finally finding their edges. Tomorrow, he'd take all of this to the police. Tonight, he'd make sure every door was locked and every window secure. Inside, Lena appeared in the kitchen, wrapped in a blanket, looking younger than her 24 years. Couldn't sleep? Ethan asked. I heard you on the phone. Did you find something? He told her about the gas station footage, about the cell phone records, about the timeline that made Vivian and Tyler's story impossible. Lena's hand came up to cover her mouth, tears streaming down her face. It's real. The proof is real. It's real, Ethan confirmed. Tomorrow we take it to the police. We make them listen. And we make sure your family faces exactly what they did. They're not my family. Lena's voice was fierce despite the tears. Not anymore. They gave up that right when they left me in the rain. Ethan moved closer, his hand finding her shoulder in comfort that felt earned. Then we find you a better one. One that doesn't give up on you, one that stops. She looked up at him, something raw and grateful and terrified in her expression. Why are you doing all this? Really? Because someone needs to, and because I can, and because... He paused, finding the truth of it. Because Maya's watching how I handle this, even if she doesn't know the details. And I want her to grow up knowing that when someone asks for help, you give it. No matter how complicated, no matter how scary. You just show up. Your wife must have been extraordinary. She was. But so are you, Lena. You survived. You fought. You didn't let them win. That's extraordinary, all on its own. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, 2 people thrown together by chance and choosing to make it matter. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, Vivian and Tyler Brooks were probably sleeping, or trying to, or lying awake wondering where Lena was and what she was planning, and whether their carefully constructed crime was about to collapse around them. Tomorrow would bring police and questions and the slow machinery of justice grinding into motion. But tonight, there was only this: safety, warmth, proof, and the knowledge that truth was more powerful than rain. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucracy. Detective Sarah Martinez listened to their story with the kind of professional skepticism that came from years of hearing impossible things that turned out to be true and plausible things that turned out to be lies. She was 40-something, sharp-eyed, with graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. "Let me make sure I understand," she said, fingers steepled on her desk. "You're alleging that your stepmother and stepbrother drugged you, drove you to a remote location, and abandoned you with the intention of causing your death by exposure." "That's exactly what I'm alleging," Lena said. Her voice was steady, hands folded in her lap. Ethan sat beside her, silent support, because that's exactly what happened. "And you have evidence to support this?" Ethan leaned forward, sliding a USB drive across the desk. "Gas station footage from last night showing Vivian and Tyler Brooks at a location 3 miles from where I found Lena. Timestamp puts them there at 9:47 p.m., right after the alleged abandonment and right before they called in the missing person report. Cell phone tower data showing Tyler's phone near Route 9 during the time in question, then going dark before pinging back on near their residence. Martinez picked up the drive like it might explode. How did you obtain cell phone records?" "A friend pulled them off the record. You'll need a warrant to use them officially, but they'll point you in the right direction." Ethan's voice was calm, the tone of someone who'd navigated this dance before. "The gas station footage is clean, though. Owner gave consent for the review and copy." "And you are?" "Ethan Cole, former insurance fraud investigator. I'm the one who found Lena on Route 9 around 9:30 last night. She was hypothermic, barely conscious, in her wheelchair in the middle of the road during a storm." Martinez's eyes sharpened. "You didn't call police or an ambulance?" "She asked me not to. And given what she told me about her family, I thought it was worth hearing her out before involving authorities who might not believe her." "That's called obstruction. That's called helping someone who was terrified and had good reason to be." Ethan didn't flinch. "You can charge me if you want, detective, but that won't change what's on that drive or what happened to Lena." Martinez was quiet for a moment, studying them both. Then she plugged in the drive, opening the video file. Grainy security footage filled her screen. Overhead view of a gas station, timestamp in the corner. They watched as a black BMW pulled up to pump 3. A man got out, tall, athletic build, moving with the casual confidence of someone with no particular worries. Tyler Brooks. He filled the tank, went inside, emerged with 2 water bottles, got back in the car. Through the windshield, another figure was visible in the passenger seat. Female, blonde, checking her phone with the relaxed posture of someone on an ordinary errand. The BMW pulled away at 9:51 p.m. "That's them," Lena said quietly. "That's definitely them." "Being at a gas station isn't a crime," Martinez pointed out. "Being at a gas station miles from your house in the opposite direction of where you claim to be searching for your missing stepdaughter is suspicious as hell," Ethan countered. "They told you they were searching the neighborhood, the local parks, anywhere near their house. They said Lena had gone out for air and gotten confused, but that gas station is nowhere near their search area. It's exactly where you'd stop on your way back from Route 9. Martinez replayed the footage, making notes. "This is circumstantial. Interesting, worth investigating, but circumstantial." "Then investigate," Lena said. There was steel in her voice now, the kind that came from surviving what should have killed you. "Get a warrant for Tyler's phone records. Check the car's GPS system. Pull traffic camera footage from the highway near Route 9. The evidence is there, detective. You just have to look for it." "What about the drugs you claim were used? Any physical evidence of that?" Lena's hands tightened in her lap. "The rain washed away most of what I was wearing, and it's been almost 18 hours. Anything in my system is probably metabolized by now." "Probably isn't, definitely. If you're willing, we can do a blood test, a tox screen. Some substances leave traces for days." Martinez's expression softened slightly. "Miss Brooks, I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying I need more than belief to build a case. I need evidence that will hold up in court, that will convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt." "The footage is a start," Ethan said. "Combined with the cell phone data, the timeline discrepancies in their police report, and Lena's testimony about what happened, it's enough to justify a deeper investigation. It's enough to ask more questions, yes." Martinez closed the video file. "But you need to understand something. These are serious accusations against people with resources, reputation, and presumably good lawyers. If we move on this and the case falls apart, they walk free and probably sue everyone involved. So we do this right, or we don't do it at all. Then do it right, Lena said. Please. Because if you don't, they'll try again. And next time I might not be lucky enough to have someone take a wrong turn. Martinez studied her for a long moment. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to interview Vivian and Tyler Brooks separately, get their statements on record. I'm going to request warrants for phone records and GPS data. I'm going to have crime scene techs go over Route 9 to see if there's any physical evidence that survived the storm. And Miss Brooks, I'm going to need you to come back tomorrow for that talk screen and a formal recorded statement. Whatever you need, Lena said immediately. One more thing. Martinez's gaze shifted to Ethan. You need to step back now. You've done your part. You found her. You helped her get safe. You brought this to our attention. But from here on out, this is a police investigation. That means no more digging, no more collecting evidence, no more amateur detective work. If you interfere or contaminate anything, you could blow the whole case. Ethan wanted to argue. Every instinct said to keep pushing, keep investigating, keep building the wall of evidence brick by brick. But Martinez was right. There was a line between helping and hindering, and he was about to cross it. Understood, he said finally. Good. Martinez stood, extending her hand. Miss Brooks, I'm sorry this happened to you, and I promise you we'll follow where the evidence leads. If your family did what you say they did, we'll prove it. Thank you, Lena whispered. Outside the station, the November morning had turned crisp and bright. Ethan walked Lena to the truck, both of them quiet with the weight of what came next. She believed us, Lena said finally. At least I think she did. She believed enough to investigate. That's all we can ask for right now. Ethan unlocked the doors. But Lena, Martinez was right about one thing. This is going to get complicated. Vivian and Tyler are going to lawyer up, they're going to push back hard, and they're going to try to make you look unstable or confused or vindictive. You need to be ready for that. I am ready. She climbed into the truck, something resolute in the set of her shoulders. I've spent 8 years being underestimated because of my disability, being treated like I'm less capable, less reliable, less credible. I'm used to people not believing me, but this time I have proof. This time I have you, and this time I'm not backing down. They drove back through town, past the ordinary Wednesday morning routines of people who had no idea what justice looked like when it was still being built. Ethan's phone buzzed repeatedly. Work emails he was ignoring, texts from Diane checking in, a voicemail from Maya's school about an upcoming field trip. Normal life, still happening, still demanding attention even while everything else fell apart and came together. I need to pick up Maya from school at 3, he said, checking the time. You want to come with, or would you rather stay at the house? I'll come. Lena's answer was immediate. If that's okay, I don't want to be alone right now. You don't have to explain. And yes, it's okay. They stopped for lunch at a diner that specialized in comfort food and didn't ask questions. Lena picked at a grilled cheese while Ethan demolished a burger, both of them pretending the meal was normal, that they were just two people grabbing food instead of two people waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ethan's phone rang. Martinez. Detective, he answered, putting it on speaker so Lena could hear. Quick update. I interviewed Vivian Brooks an hour ago. Her story is that Lena seemed disoriented after dinner, said she wanted to go for a drive to clear her head. They tried to convince her to stay home because of the weather, but Lena insisted. She left around 8 p.m. They expected her back within an hour. When she didn't return and wasn't answering her phone, they started searching locally before calling it in. That's complete fabrication, Lena said. I never said I wanted to go anywhere. I was reading in my room when I started feeling sick. I'm just telling you what she said. Tyler's story matches almost word for word. Too closely, actually, which is its own red flag. People telling the truth don't usually align that perfectly. People with a rehearsed story do. What about the gas station footage? Ethan asked. They claimed they drove around searching and stopped for gas. Said they were upset, not thinking clearly about what direction they were going. It's plausible enough that we can't dismiss it outright, but combined with everything else, Martinez paused. I've got a judge reviewing warrant requests now. If he signs off, we'll have official phone records and vehicle GPS by end of day. That's when this either solidifies or falls apart." "It won't fall apart," Lena said quietly, "because I'm telling the truth." "I hope so, Miss Brooks. I'll call when I know more." After she hung up, Lena pushed her plate away, appetite gone. "They practiced their story, just like you said they would, which means they're scared. Good." Ethan flagged down their waitress for the check. "Scared people make mistakes, remember? They aligned their stories too perfectly," Martinez noticed. "That's mistake number one." "What if the warrants don't come through? What if the judge thinks it's not enough?" "Then we find another way. But I don't think that's going to happen. You've got a credible allegation, physical evidence placing them near the scene, timeline inconsistencies, and a clear motive. That's plenty for a warrant." They killed time at a bookstore after lunch, Lena browsing the disability advocacy section, while Ethan pretended to read a thriller he couldn't focus on. His mind kept spinning through scenarios, possibilities, ways this could go wrong or right. At 2:45, they headed to Maya's school. The pickup line was already forming, parents in SUVs and sedans, everyone scrolling phones while they waited. Ethan found a spot near the back, windows down, autumn air carrying the smell of fallen leaves. "Your daughter," Lena said suddenly. "Does she know about any of this?" "She knows I helped someone who needed help. She knows you're staying with us for a while. But the details, the attempted murder, the investigation, all of it. No, she's 7. She doesn't need that burden. When I was 7, my mom was already sick, cancer. I knew something was wrong, but nobody would tell me what. They thought they were protecting me." Lena's voice was distant, remembering. "It didn't help. It just made the fear worse because I didn't understand it." "What would you have wanted them to say?" "The truth. In words I could understand. That my mom was sick, that it was serious, that they were doing everything they could. Kids can handle more than adults think. It's the lying that breaks them." Ethan absorbed that, filing it away. The school doors opened and children poured out like water from a broken dam, all noise and energy and chaos. He spotted Maya immediately, purple backpack, braids bouncing, launching herself toward the truck with the single-minded determination of a heat-seeking missile. She climbed into the back seat, already talking before her seatbelt clicked. "Dad, we learned about the water cycle, and I made a diagram, and Mrs. Peterson said it was really good, and can Lena see it? Hi, Lena. Are you still staying with us? Do you like science?" "I love science," Lena said, turning in her seat to face Maya. "And I definitely want to see your diagram." The drive home was filled with Maya's chatter, questions tumbling over each other without waiting for answers. Lena answered what she could, asked follow-up questions, engaged with the kind of genuine interest that Maya responded to like sunlight. Watching them in the rearview mirror, Ethan felt that strange shift again, the sense that his carefully constructed life was transforming into something he hadn't planned, but maybe needed. They were halfway home when his phone rang again. Martinez. Ethan pulled over before answering, needing to focus. "We got the warrants," Martinez said without preamble. "Phone records, GPS data, everything. And Cole," her voice held something new, something sharp and satisfied. "Tyler Brooks's phone GPS puts him on Route 9 at 9:08 p.m. That's 22 minutes before you found Lena. The car's built-in navigation system shows the same thing. They were there, right where she said they'd be." Ethan closed his eyes, relief flooding through him like warmth. "That's it then. That's proof. It's strong evidence. Combined with the gas station footage and the timeline discrepancies, we have probable cause. I'm bringing them in for formal questioning tomorrow morning. Both of them, separately, with lawyers present. This isn't just about asking questions anymore. This is building a criminal case." "What do you need from Lena?" "That talk screen, as soon as possible. If there's anything left in her system that can prove she was drugged, it'll cement this. And I need her to be ready for what comes next. Media attention probably once arrests are made. The story of a wealthy family trying to murder their disabled relative for inheritance money, that's going to get coverage. We'll handle it. One more thing." Martinez's voice softened slightly. "You did good work here, Cole. Finding her, keeping her safe, bringing this forward. A lot of people would have driven past or passed the buck. You didn't. I did what anyone should do. But most people don't. That's why it matters. After the call ended, Ethan sat in the truck for a moment, letting the information settle. Proof. Real, undeniable GPS-tracked proof. The case that had felt impossible yesterday was now inevitable. Daddy? Maya's voice came from the back seat. Why did we stop? Are we okay? He turned, meeting his daughter's eyes in the mirror. Lena's words about truth echoed in his mind. We're okay, baby. Actually, we're better than okay. Remember how I told you I helped someone who needed help? Lena, Maya said immediately. Right. Lena. Well, some people hurt her, and we've been helping make sure they have to answer for what they did. And today we found out that the people who investigate these things, the police, they believe her. They're going to make sure she's safe and that the people who hurt her face consequences. Maya processed this with the seriousness she brought to important things. Like when Tommy pushed me on the playground and had to sit in timeout? Exactly like that, except these people are adults, so the timeout is more serious. Good, Maya's voice was firm. People shouldn't hurt people, especially not people they're supposed to love. Out of the mouths of children, Ethan thought. You're absolutely right. They drove home in lighter silence, the weight of uncertainty replaced by the solid ground of evidence and action. Inside the house, Maya immediately dragged Lena off to show her the water cycle diagram while Ethan started dinner. Spaghetti, simple and reliable, and requiring just enough attention to keep his hands busy while his mind spun. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom, the PI. Heard Martinez got her warrants. Nice work. Beer's on you. Another text, this one from Edward Chen. Heard from Detective Martinez. The codicil's timing is looking very prescient. Call me tomorrow. The network of people who'd helped was checking in, celebrating the small victory of evidence obtained and truth getting closer. Ethan responded to each one, gratitude mixing with the awareness that this was just beginning. Over dinner, spaghetti with too much garlic, the way Maya liked it, Lena was quiet. Not withdrawn exactly, but processing. Ethan recognized the look. It was the same expression he'd worn in the weeks after his wife's death, that sense of reality rearranging itself into something unrecognizable. After Maya went to bed, they sat in the living room with tea neither of them really wanted. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that invited honesty. They're going to be arrested, Lena said finally. Really arrested. This is actually happening. It's happening. Martinez will question them tomorrow. And unless they somehow have an explanation for GPS data, which they won't, she'll have enough to hold them. The DA will decide on formal charges, but attempted murder seems likely. Maybe conspiracy. Definitely something that carries serious time. I should feel good about that. Lena's hands wrapped around her mug. Relieved, vindicated, something. But mostly, I just feel tired and sad. They were my family for 8 years, Ethan. Vivian taught me to braid my hair. Tyler used to joke that I was the annoying little sister he never wanted but got stuck with anyway. And now they're going to prison for trying to kill me. You're allowed to grieve that, even while you're angry, even while you're fighting back. Ethan set his mug down. People are complicated. They can be kind sometimes and monstrous other times. That doesn't mean you're wrong for remembering the kind parts even while you're holding them accountable for the monstrous ones. Did you feel that way? About the driver who killed your wife? The question was gentle but direct, and Ethan appreciated it. Too many people tiptoed around his grief like it was contagious. At first, I just felt rage. Pure, simple, burning rage at someone who got behind the wheel drunk and took away my daughter's mother. But later, years later, I learned he'd lost his job that day, was drowning in depression, made one catastrophically bad choice. And I could hold both truths. That he destroyed my life, and that he wasn't a monster, just a person who did a monstrous thing. It didn't excuse it, but it made it human. How did you forgive him? I didn't, not really, but I stopped letting the anger eat me alive. I chose to focus on what I still had instead of what he took. Ethan met her eyes. That's not the same as forgiveness. That's survival. Lena nodded slowly. I don't know if I can forgive them. I don't even know if I should try. Then don't. Not now, not ever, if that's what you need. Forgiveness isn't a requirement for healing, Lena. Sometimes justice is enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that came from shared experience rather than lack of things to say. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening routines, porch lights clicking on, garage doors closing, families tucking in for the night. "Can I ask you something?" Lena's voice was tentative. "Anything. Why didn't you have any pictures of your wife up? I've been here 2 days and I haven't seen a single photo." Ethan's chest tightened. It was a question he'd asked himself 100 times, always with the same unsatisfying answer. At first it hurt too much to see her face. Every photo was a reminder of what Maya lost, what I lost, so I took them down. And then months turned into a year, and a year turned into 3, and putting them back up felt like admitting I'd been wrong to take them down in the first place. Maya must ask about her. All the time. I tell her stories, show her videos on my phone, make sure she knows her mother loved her. But the house? He gestured around them. It became a space for moving forward instead of looking back. I don't know if that was the right choice. Most days I still don't know. What would your wife say about that? The question hit like a fist. Ethan had to sit with it, really sit with it, before he could answer. She'd say that healing looks different for everyone, that there's no right way to grieve, and that whether her picture was on the wall or in my heart didn't change how much I loved her. She sounds like she was wise. She was, about most things, terrible at parallel parking, but wise about the stuff that mattered. Lena smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her all day. "I think she'd be proud of you, for stopping, for helping, for showing Maya what courage looks like. I think your father would be proud of you too, for surviving, for fighting back, for not letting them win. I hope so." Lena's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. "I miss him every single day. And I keep thinking about how he tried to protect me even after he was gone, with the will and the trust and everything. He knew, Ethan. On some level, he knew what they were, and he tried to shield me from it. Then honor that. By living, by thriving, by not letting their greed define your story. Is that what you're doing? Living for your wife?" "No." Ethan's answer was firm. "I'm living for Maya, and for myself. And because not living would be the bigger tragedy. My wife died. I didn't. That means I have to keep going, keep trying, keep finding reasons to get up in the morning. Some days that's Maya's laugh. Some days it's helping someone in the rain. Whatever it takes." They talked until after midnight, the conversation wandering from heavy to light and back again. Lena told him about her father, about the way he used to read to her every night even when she was too old for it, about how he'd refused to treat her disability like a limitation. Ethan told her about his wife, about their courtship and marriage, and the 1,000 small moments that built a life. It was the kind of conversation that only happened in the space between crisis and resolution, when adrenaline had faded but calm hadn't quite arrived, a liminal space where truth came easier. When Lena finally headed to bed, Ethan stayed up, checking email and doing the mindless tasks that kept ordinary life running. He confirmed Maya's field trip permission, paid a bill that was almost late, responded to a work query about a claim he'd processed last week. Normal life, still there, still waiting. His phone buzzed one more time. Martinez. "Interviews scheduled for 9 a.m. We'll update after." Ethan set an alarm, checked the locks one more time, and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring interrogations and lawyers and the machinery of justice grinding forward. Tomorrow would bring consequences for people who thought they'd gotten away with murder. But tonight, everyone under his roof was safe. That had to be enough. He fell asleep thinking about evidence and timelines and the look on Vivian's face when Martinez showed her the GPS data that proved her lies. He fell asleep planning for scenarios and contingencies and the ways this could still go sideways. But mostly, he fell asleep thinking about the woman in his guest room who'd survived what should have killed her and was choosing courage over surrender. The night passed quietly. No nightmares for Lena that he heard, no crying from Maya, just the ordinary silence of a house full of people learning to breathe again. Morning came with texts and updates and the news that Ethan had been waiting for. Martinez had questioned both Vivian and Tyler. The GPS evidence had shattered their rehearsed stories. Their lawyers had advised them to stop talking. Arrest warrants were being processed. By noon, the news would be public. By evening, it would be everywhere. Ethan made pancakes, Maya's favorite, and watched his daughter chatter at Lena about her upcoming field trip to the Science Museum. The domesticity of it all felt surreal against the backdrop of arrest warrants and attempted murder charges. "Daddy, can Lena come to the museum with us?" Maya asked around a mouthful of pancake. "That's a parent chaperone trip, kiddo, not really set up for extra adults." "But you're going to be there, so Lena could just come with you." Ethan glanced at Lena, who was looking at Maya with undisguised affection. "We'll see. There might be some other things Lena needs to take care of that day." "Like what?" "Like giving a statement to the police," Lena said gently. "Remember how your dad said the people who hurt me have to answer for what they did? Well, I have to help make sure that happens by telling my side of everything." "Oh." Maya considered this seriously. "That's important. You should definitely do that. Thank you for understanding." "You're welcome. Can you pass the syrup?" Ethan's phone rang. Martinez again. He stepped into the hallway to answer. "They're in custody," she said without preamble. "Both of them. Arrested an hour ago on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Bail hearing is set for tomorrow afternoon." "Will they get bail?" "Probably. Flight risk is minimal despite the money, and they've got no priors. But it'll be high, and the conditions will be strict. No contact with Lena, surrender of passports, regular check-ins, the usual." Martinez paused. "You should know, this is going to hit the news cycle hard. Wealthy family, disabled victim, inheritance motive. It's got all the elements of a media firestorm. Lena needs to be prepared for that." "I'll talk to her." Also, the tox screen came back, traces of lorazepam in her system. That's a benzodiazepine, causes sedation and confusion. In the dose she had, it would have made her incapacitated but not unconscious. She'd have been aware but unable to respond effectively. Ethan's jaw tightened, so she was conscious while they abandoned her. She knew what was happening and couldn't stop it. Exactly, which makes this even more premeditated. They wanted her aware enough to suffer. The DA is going to have a field day with that detail. Martinez's voice softened. "Tell Lena she was right about everything. Every detail she gave us checked out. Her testimony is solid, her memory is clear, and we've got the evidence to back it all up. She's credible, Cole. The jury's going to believe her." "Thank you, Detective, for taking her seriously, for investigating this properly. A lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people are lazy cops who take the easy answer. I'm not one of them." She paused. "Take care of her, Cole. This isn't over yet. The arrest is just step one." After they hung up, Ethan returned to the kitchen where Maya was showing Lena her science homework, and Lena was offering suggestions with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed 7-year-old logic. "Lena," he said quietly, "can we talk for a minute?" She followed him to the living room, reading his expression. "They arrested them. Both of them. Attempted murder and conspiracy charges. The talk screen confirmed lorazepam in your system. Everything you said happened exactly the way you said it happened." Lena sat down heavily, like her legs had suddenly stopped working. "It's real. It's really real. It's real. And Lena..." Ethan sat beside her. "This is going to become public, probably today. The media is going to pick up on it, and it's going to be intense. You need to decide now how you want to handle that. Whether you want to make a statement, whether you want to stay silent, whether you want legal representation for the media aspect. I don't know." Her voice was small. "What would you do?" "I'd tell the truth. Simply, clearly, without embellishment. But I'd do it through a lawyer or a prepared statement, not in an ambush interview. Control the narrative before someone else does it for you." "Can Edward Chen help with that?" "He can, or he can refer you to someone who specializes in this kind of thing. Either way, you're going to need support. This isn't just about the criminal case anymore. This is about protecting your reputation, your privacy, and your recovery." Lena nodded slowly, processing. "Okay, I'll call Chen. I'll figure it out. But Ethan..." She looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you. For everything, for stopping, for believing me, for not giving up when it would have been easier. I wouldn't have made it this far without you." "You would have," Ethan said firmly. "Maybe not as fast, maybe not as smoothly, but you would have. Because you're a survivor, Lena. You always were. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." You were in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. And I don't think that was an accident. Before Ethan could respond, Maya appeared in the doorway. Are you guys okay? You look sad. Lena wiped her eyes quickly. We're okay, sweetie. Actually, we're better than okay. We just got some news that's happy and scary at the same time. What kind of news? Ethan caught Lena's eye, checking if she wanted to explain. At her slight nod, he crouched down to Maya's level. Remember how we talked about people who hurt Lena having to answer for what they did? Well, the police arrested them today. They're going to have to go to court and face consequences. Good, Maya said with fierce certainty. They should be in timeout forever. Something like that, Ethan agreed, pulling his daughter into a hug. You've got a good heart, kiddo. Don't ever lose that. I won't. Can we have ice cream to celebrate? It's 10 in the morning. So? Ethan laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuineness. Fine. Ice cream for breakfast it is. They ate ice cream in the kitchen, the three of them, while the world outside prepared to learn about attempted murder and inheritance and survival. They ate ice cream and talked about field trips and dinosaurs and whether chocolate or vanilla was the superior flavor. And for just a moment, in that sun-filled kitchen with melting ice cream and easy laughter, they were just three people finding joy in small things. Not a survivor and a rescuer and an innocent child. Just people, choosing to live despite what darkness had touched them. It was enough. For now, it was more than enough. The news broke at 2 p.m., exactly as Martinez had predicted. Ethan was working from his home office when his phone started buzzing with alerts. The headlines varied in wording but told the same story. Local woman alleges family attempted murder for inheritance. Disabled heiress left in storm claims stepfamily tried to kill her. Brooks family arrested in shocking murder plot. By 3 p.m., when he picked up Maya from school, 2 news vans were parked on his street. He'd expected this, prepared for this, but seeing the cameras and reporters clustered near his driveway still made his stomach clench. Maya spotted them immediately. Daddy, why are there TV people at our house? Because sometimes news stories get attention and reporters want to talk to people involved. He pulled into the driveway slowly, ignoring the journalist who immediately started approaching. But we're not talking to them, okay? We're just going inside. But what if they have questions? Then they can ask them somewhere else. Our house is private. He unbuckled her, taking her hand firmly. Stay close to me. They made it to the front door through a chorus of shouted questions. Mr. Cole, is it true you found Lena Brooks? Can you comment on the arrest? How is Miss Brooks doing? Ethan kept his expression neutral, his grip on Maya gentle but secure, and didn't answer a single question. Inside, Lena sat in the living room with her laptop, scrolling through articles with a numb expression. She looked up when they entered, eyes wide. They're everywhere. Every news site, every social media platform, people are... She stopped, glancing at Maya. Talking about it. A lot. Expected, Ethan said, though his tone was gentle. Did Chen call back about media strategy? He referred me to a crisis management attorney. Sarah Chen, no relation. I'm supposed to talk to her at 5. Lena's hands twisted together. Some of the articles are kind. They're calling me brave, saying I'm courageous for coming forward. But others, she didn't finish, but Ethan could guess. There were always skeptics, always people who questioned victims, especially when money was involved. He'd deal with that later. Right now, Maya was watching them both with the too perceptive eyes of a child who knew something was wrong. Maya, why don't you go start your homework? I need to talk to Lena for a few minutes. But I want to help. You are helping by being patient and giving us a little time. He kissed the top of her head. I promise we're okay. After Maya retreated to her room with visible reluctance, Ethan sat beside Lena, taking the laptop and closing it. What did the articles say? The ones that weren't kind. That I'm making it up for attention. That I'm trying to punish Vivian and Tyler for inheriting less than I did. That cerebral palsy can cause cognitive issues, and maybe I genuinely don't remember what happened correctly. Her voice was flat, reciting facts that hurt. One article quoted an anonymous family friend saying I'd been unstable since my father's death, that I'd threatened to hurt myself, that this whole thing is a cry for help. That's Vivian's playbook. Plant doubt, create alternate narratives, make you look unreliable. Ethan's jaw tightened. But Lena, you have something she doesn't. You have evidence, GPS data, talk screens, gas station footage, phone records. Those don't lie. Public opinion might waver, but facts don't. What if the jury believes her instead of me? Then we'll appeal. We'll keep fighting. But that's not going to happen because Martinez built a solid case. The evidence speaks louder than any anonymous quote. He paused. But I need to know. Are you prepared for this to get worse before it gets better? Because it will. The trial's months away. Between now and then, Vivian's lawyers are going to attack your credibility however they can. They're going to make you relive that night over and over. They're going to try to break you down. I know. Lena's voice was steadier than her expression. But I also know I'm telling the truth, and I know I have people who believe me. That has to be enough. The doorbell rang. Through the window, Ethan spotted Detective Martinez on the porch, alone, her badge visible to the reporters who were now filming her arrival. He let her in quickly, shutting the door on shouted questions. Sorry about the circus, Martinez said, glancing at the closed curtains. It'll die down in a few days once the next story breaks. That's how news cycles work. Any updates? Ethan asked. Bail hearing happened this afternoon. Judge set it at $2 million each, which their lawyers posted immediately. They're out but under house arrest with ankle monitors. No contact orders in place for Lena. No leaving the county. Daily check-ins required. Martinez turned to Lena. I'm here because I wanted to give you a heads up in person. They're going to fight this hard. Their lawyers already filed a motion to dismiss based on insufficient evidence, which the judge will deny. But it's the opening salvo. This is going to be a battle. I'm ready, Lena said, though her hands betrayed her nerves. There's something else. We executed a search warrant on the Brooks residence this morning. Found a bottle of lorazepam in Vivian's medicine cabinet, prescribed to her 3 months ago for anxiety. The bottle should have 20 pills based on the prescription date and dosage. It only had 12. Someone used 8 pills without documentation. Ethan's mind immediately calculated dosages and implications. 8 pills would be enough to incapacitate someone Lena's size. Exactly. And when we interviewed the prescribing doctor, he said Vivian had never mentioned anxiety severe enough to require that medication regularly. She got the prescription and barely used it until she needed it for something else. Martinez's expression was grim satisfaction. That's premeditation, Lena. That's evidence she planned this weeks in advance. 3 months ago, Lena said slowly. That's right after the will reading, right after she found out she wasn't getting everything. Which establishes motive and planning. The DA is building a timeline that shows this wasn't a crime of passion or opportunity. This was calculated, deliberate, attempted murder. That matters to a jury. After Martinez left, the house felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in with the weight of what was coming. Ethan made dinner, tacos, easy and familiar, while Lena took her 5 o'clock call with Sarah Chen, the crisis management attorney. Maya set the table without being asked, her 7-year-old instincts telling her that helping was important, even if she didn't understand why. They ate quietly, conversation sparse, each of them processing in their own way. When Maya asked about the reporters, Ethan explained that sometimes grown-up problems got public attention, and the best thing to do was ignore it and focus on what mattered. What matters? Maya asked. Family, Ethan said, surprising himself with the word. The people who show up for you, that's what matters. After dinner, after Maya's bath and bedtime story, after the house finally settled into evening quiet, Lena emerged from the guest room looking exhausted but determined. Sarah Chen thinks I should make a statement, she said, sitting beside Ethan on the couch. Nothing long, just a few sentences confirming the facts, expressing gratitude for the investigation, and asking for privacy. She'll distribute it to media outlets tomorrow. How do you feel about that? Scared, relieved, angry that I have to defend myself for being a victim. She pulled her knees to her chest. But Sarah said controlling the narrative early makes a difference. So I'll do it. What will the statement say? Lena pulled out her phone, reading from a draft. On the evening of October 28th, I was drugged and abandoned in a remote location by members of my family who sought to benefit from my death. Thanks to the intervention of a kind stranger and the thorough investigation by local police, I survived and evidence has confirmed my account of events. I am grateful for the support of law enforcement and ask for privacy as the legal process moves forward. I look forward to justice being served. It's good. Simple, factual, doesn't overpromise or get emotional. Sarah wrote most of it. I just approved the wording. Lena set the phone down. Feels surreal. 3 days ago, I was reading in my room thinking about what to make for dinner. Now I'm issuing press statements about attempted murder. Trauma has a way of accelerating life. You go from ordinary to extraordinary without any warning or preparation. Ethan had lived that truth after his wife's death. One moment he was married with a stable life plan. The next he was a widower figuring out single parenthood and grief simultaneously. But you adjust. You find your footing, and eventually the extraordinary becomes your new ordinary. How long did that take for you? After your wife? About a year before I stopped feeling like I was drowning, another year before I stopped feeling guilty for not drowning, and then one day I woke up and realized I was living again instead of just surviving. 3 years, give or take. 3 years, Lena repeated softly. That's a long time. It is, but it's also not. Time doesn't heal. That's a myth. But it does give you distance, space to breathe, room to rebuild. He looked at her fully. You're going to get through this, Lena. The trial, the media, all of it. And on the other side, you're going to have a life that's completely yours. No one controlling it, no one threatening it. Just you, making choices, building something real. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. Then you get to figure it out. That's the gift of survival. You get to decide what comes next. They sat in comfortable silence until Lena's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression shifting to something harder. Tyler texted me, from a different number than I have saved. What did he say? She showed him the screen. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen. Vivian manipulated me. Please talk to your lawyer about dropping the charges. We can work this out as a family. Ethan's response was immediate. Don't answer. Forward it to Martinez and block the number. That's a violation of the no contact order and also a transparent attempt to manipulate you into sabotaging the case. He sounds genuine, though. What if he really was manipulated by Vivian? What if he... Lena. Ethan's voice was firm. Tyler was driving that car. Tyler physically removed you from the vehicle. Tyler left you in the rain. Even if Vivian planned it, he executed it. That makes him just as culpable. And this text? This is him trying to save himself by playing victim and banking on your compassion. Don't fall for it. She stared at the message for a long moment, then forwarded it to Martinez and blocked the number without responding. There, she said quietly. Done. Good. That's growth. It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like becoming someone I don't recognize. Sometimes growth looks like hardness when really it's just healthy boundaries. You're not becoming cruel, Lena. You're becoming protected. There's a difference. Over the next few days, the media attention intensified before beginning its inevitable decline. Lena's statement was picked up by major outlets, and the narrative began to shift in her favor as more evidence details leaked to the press. The photo of Lena that circulated, a professional headshot from her father's funeral program, showed a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Public sympathy swung heavily toward her. Vivian and Tyler, meanwhile, gave their own statement through their attorney. It claimed they were innocent, that evidence would prove the charges were based on misunderstandings and Lena's compromised mental state, and that they loved their stepdaughter and stepbrother respectively and were devastated by the accusations. The statement was clinical, carefully worded, and utterly unconvincing to anyone who'd seen the GPS data. Ethan watched it all unfold from his living room, Lena beside him, both of them witnesses to a story they were living, but that had taken on a life beyond them. His phone rang constantly, reporters, old colleagues wanting details, even a producer from a true crime podcast asking if Lena would be interested in being interviewed. He declined every request on her behalf, building a wall between her recovery and public consumption. Maya adapted to the new normal with the resilience of childhood. She accepted that Lena was staying with them, that reporters sometimes showed up, that Daddy was busier than usual. She included Lena in her bedtime routine, asking her to read stories when Ethan was on the phone with lawyers or investigators. She drew pictures of the three of them, stick figures holding hands, and presented them proudly to Lena, who taped them to the guest room wall like they were gallery pieces. The bond between Maya and Lena grew in the quiet spaces between crisis points. Lena helped with homework, listened to endless dinosaur facts, played board games with the serious attention that made Maya feel important. In return, Maya offered uncomplicated affection and the kind of acceptance that didn't require explanation or justification. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his carefully protected heart. This wasn't supposed to be permanent. Lena was staying with them out of necessity and safety, not because this was her home. Eventually, she'd move back to her father's house or get her own place or build the life she'd been denied. This was temporary, but it didn't feel temporary. 2 weeks after the arrest, Ethan came home from a grocery run to find Lena and Maya in the kitchen attempting to bake cookies. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, chocolate chips scattered across the counter, mixing bowls stacked haphazardly in the sink. Maya's face was covered in what looked like cookie dough, and Lena was laughing so hard she was crying. "What happened here?" Ethan asked, setting down grocery bags. "We're making cookies," Maya announced. "But the recipe was confusing, and Lena said we should improvise, and I think we maybe improvised too much." "These are going to be either the best cookies ever or completely inedible," Lena added, still laughing. "No in between." They turned out to be somewhere in between, misshapen, unevenly cooked, but unexpectedly delicious. They ate them warm with milk, the three of them sitting at the kitchen table, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated, domestic joy. "These are really good," Maya said seriously, chocolate smeared across her face. "We should make them again." "Definitely," Lena agreed, meeting Ethan's eyes across the table with a smile that made his chest tighten. Later that night, after Maya was asleep and the kitchen was finally clean, Lena found Ethan on the back porch. November had turned cold, frost threatening the grass, stars sharp overhead. "Can I join you?" she asked. Of course. She settled into the chair beside him, wrapped in a blanket, both of them quiet for a moment. "I need to tell you something," she said finally, "and I don't want you to respond right away. Just listen, and then think about it, and then we can talk later if you want." "Okay." "I'm falling in love with your life." The words came out in a rush. "Not just grateful for your help, not just comfortable in your house. I'm falling in love with the routine and the chaos and the way Maya asks 3,000 questions at dinner. I'm falling in love with the way you make coffee first thing every morning and check all the locks at night. I'm falling in love with feeling like I belong somewhere." Ethan's heart was racing, but he stayed quiet, letting her continue. "And I'm not sure, but I think I might be falling in love with you. Not because you saved me, though you did. Not because I need you, though I do. But because you're kind and patient, and you teach your daughter to stop for people in the rain. Because you make terrible jokes when you're nervous, and you always put Maya first, and you still talk about your wife like she matters, even though she's gone." She stopped, breath coming faster. "I know the timing is awful. I know I'm still dealing with trauma and court dates and all of this mess. I know you probably don't feel the same way, and that's okay. I just needed you to know that this, whatever this is between us, it means something to me. More than safety, more than gratitude. Something real." The silence that followed was profound. Ethan stared at the stars, feeling the weight of her confession settling over him like snow. He thought about his wife, about the promise he'd made to himself to be careful, to protect Maya, to never risk their stability for something as uncertain as love. He thought about every reason this was a bad idea, the timing, the trauma, the complications. And then he thought about Lena reading to Maya, about her laugh in the kitchen, about the way she'd face down her would-be killers with courage he'd rarely witnessed. He thought about how the house felt warmer with her in it, how Maya smiled more, how he smiled more. "I need to tell you something too," he said finally, turning to face her. "And I'm not sure how you'll take it." Lena's expression was open, vulnerable, braced for rejection. "I think I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me." His voice was steady despite the admission. I haven't let myself feel this way about anyone since my wife died. It felt disloyal, dangerous, like I was risking Maya's stability for my own happiness. But then you showed up in my headlights and everything changed. Ethan, let me finish. He took a breath. I don't know if what we're feeling is real or just trauma bonding. I don't know if this will last past the trial or if you'll wake up one day and realize you confused safety with love. But I do know that for the first time in 3 years, I'm thinking about a future that includes more than just survival. And that's because of you. Lena's eyes filled with tears. So what do we do? We take it slow. We don't make promises we can't keep. We focus on getting you through the trial and making sure Maya's okay and building something sustainable instead of just reacting to crisis. He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. But we also don't pretend this isn't happening. We acknowledge it. We give it space to grow or fade naturally. And we trust that if this is real, it'll still be real when things calm down. And if it's not real, then we'll have been honest with each other, and that's worth something too. They sat together in the cold, hands clasped, both of them terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The future was uncertain. The trial loomed. Media attention would flare again as the court date approached. There were 1,000 reasons this was complicated. But there was also Maya's laughter and misshapen cookies, and the way Lena's hand fit perfectly in his. There was also the stubborn belief that sometimes good things came from terrible circumstances, that sometimes stopping in the rain led somewhere worth going. I should probably tell you something else, Lena said quietly. Edward Chen found a property I'm interested in, a small house about 10 minutes from here. 3 bedrooms, accessible features, big yard. I could afford it outright with the inheritance. I've been thinking about making an offer. Ethan's heart sank and soared simultaneously. Independence was healthy, necessary even, but the thought of her not being down the hall made the house feel emptier already. That sounds perfect for you, he managed. It's not because I want to leave. Her hand tightened on his. It's because if we're going to explore this, us, I need to do it from a position of independence, not as your rescued project or your grateful house guest. As someone with my own space and my own life, who chooses to be part of yours. That makes sense. But I'd still be close. Close enough for dinner and Maya's homework and cookie disasters. She smiled slightly. Close enough to matter, but far enough to breathe. Does that sound okay? That sounds healthy, scary, but healthy. They talked until after midnight, mapping out possibilities and contingencies and all the ways this could work or fail. When they finally went inside, the house was quiet. Maya sleeping peacefully in her room, unaware that the adults in her life were cautiously building something new from the wreckage of attempted murder and survival. Ethan checked the locks like he did every night, but this time Lena walked with him, learning the routine, becoming part of it. When they reached her room, the guest room that would soon be just a guest room again, she paused. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest, for not dismissing what I said or making it weird. Thank you for saying it, for being brave enough to risk rejection. That's what survivors do, I guess. We risk everything because we already lost everything. What's a little more?" She went to bed, and Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, processing the seismic shift the evening had brought. 3 years of careful living, 3 years of protecting his heart, and one woman in a wheelchair had demolished his defenses without even trying. His wife would have liked Lena, he realized, would have appreciated her strength and her honesty and the way she made Maya laugh, would have wanted him to be happy, even if happiness looked different than what they'd planned. The thought brought peace instead of guilt. In his own room, Ethan lay awake thinking about trials and houses and futures that suddenly felt possible instead of terrifying. He thought about Maya having a potential role model who'd survived impossible things with grace. He thought about partnership and chosen family and the stubborn insistence that love could grow even in the hardest soil. He thought about a woman left in the rain and the choice to stop that had changed everything. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole let himself imagine a future that included more than just getting through the day. He let himself imagine joy and companionship and the particular magic of finding someone who fit when you'd stopped looking. Outside, frost covered the grass and stars wheeled overhead, and the world kept turning toward whatever came next. Inside, 3 people slept under one roof: a widowed father learning to love again, a survivor learning to live again, and a 7-year-old dreaming of dinosaurs and cookies and the new normal that was becoming simply normal. The trial was still months away. Vivian and Tyler were still out on bail, plotting their defense, preparing to fight. The media would surge and fade and surge again. Justice was slow and uncertain and required patience none of them had practiced recently. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was only warmth and safety and the fragile beginning of something that might, against all odds, become beautiful. Winter came early that year, and with it, the trial date that had loomed on the calendar like a storm cloud finally ready to break. 6 months had passed since that October night, 6 months of depositions and motions and the slow grind of the legal system. 6 months of Lena building a life that was finally, genuinely hers. She'd bought the house, the one with 3 bedrooms and accessible features and a yard that backed up to a small creek. Moved in during January with help from Ethan and a handful of neighbors who showed up with boxes and encouragement. The house was hers, fully paid for, decorated with furniture she'd chosen, and art that reflected her taste instead of Vivian's expensive neutrality. But most nights she still ended up at Ethan's for dinner. It had become routine without either of them formally deciding it should be. Lena would arrive around 5:30, help Maya with homework, set the table while Ethan cooked. They'd eat together, clean up together, sometimes watch a movie, or just talk until Maya fell asleep on the couch between them. Then Lena would drive the 10 minutes home to her own space, her own bed, her own independence. It worked. They worked. The feelings that had started as trauma and gratitude had deepened into something steady and real. Ethan had introduced her to his late wife's parents, who'd welcomed Lena with the kind of grace that came from understanding that love didn't diminish love. Maya had started calling Lena's house the other home, casually mentioning both places with the easy acceptance of a child who'd learned that family could expand. They hadn't labeled what they were, hadn't made it official or complicated it with expectations. But anyone watching them could see it. The way Ethan's hand found the small of Lena's back when they walked, the way she automatically made his coffee the way he liked it, the way they moved around each other with the choreography of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. And now, the trial. Jury selection had taken 3 days. The prosecution's case would take another 2 weeks. Then the defense, then closing arguments, then the wait for a verdict that would determine whether Vivian and Tyler Brooks spent the next decades in prison or walked free. Lena was terrified. She hid it well, had learned to hide fear in the months since the arrest, but Ethan could see it in the way her hands shook slightly when she thought no one was watching, in the tension she carried in her shoulders, in the nightmares she didn't talk about, but that left shadows under her eyes. The trial's first day arrived with unseasonable warmth, March pretending to be April. Ethan took the day off work. Diane Kowalski agreed to watch Maya after school. And at 8 a.m., Ethan and Lena walked into the courthouse through a gauntlet of cameras and reporters who'd been waiting since dawn. The courtroom was smaller than Lena had imagined. She'd seen enough legal dramas to expect something grand, but this was just a room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable benches and the faint smell of floor cleaner. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Rachel Morrison, met them outside and walked them through what to expect. The opening statements will establish the narrative, she explained. Her voice was calm, confident, the tone of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. I'm going to walk the jury through the timeline. Dinner, the drugging, the abandonment, Ethan finding you. Then we'll build on that with evidence, GPS data, cell phone records, the gas station footage, the talk screen. By the time we're done, the jury will understand exactly what happened and who's responsible. What about the defense? Lena asked. What are they going to say? They'll claim you were confused, that your disability affected your perception, that Vivian and Tyler were searching for you, and their timeline inconsistencies are just the natural chaos of a family emergency. Morrison's expression hardened. They'll try to make you seem unreliable. That's why your testimony is crucial. You need to be clear, calm, and consistent. Tell the truth exactly as it happened. Don't embellish. Don't get emotional if you can help it. Just facts. I can do that, Lena said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. Ethan squeezed her hand. You've already done the hard part. You survived. This is just telling that story. Inside the courtroom, Vivian and Tyler sat at the defense table with their attorneys. Expensive suits, practiced expressions of concern and confidence. Vivian wore a conservative dress and minimal makeup, playing the role of grieving stepmother. Tyler looked younger somehow, vulnerable, like a boy instead of a 28-year-old man who'd left his stepsister to die. When Vivian's eyes met Lena's across the room, there was no recognition of the 8 years they'd spent as family, just cold calculation and something that might have been fear. The judge entered, everyone rose, and the trial began. Morrison's opening statement was devastating in its simplicity. She didn't use flowery language or emotional manipulation. She just laid out the facts like building blocks, each one supporting the next, until the structure was undeniable. Lena Brooks inherited money. Vivian and Tyler Brooks wanted that money. They drugged her, transported her to a remote location, and abandoned her in conditions designed to kill. A stranger found her. Evidence confirmed every element of her account. The defense's opening was predictable. Lena had been struggling with depression after her father's death. She'd taken her medication incorrectly, became disoriented, and wandered off. Vivian and Tyler searched frantically. The GPS data and timeline inconsistencies were just the confusion of two people terrified for their loved one. This was a tragic misunderstanding being weaponized by a young woman who couldn't accept that her family loved her. It was a good story. It would have worked if there wasn't evidence. The prosecution called witnesses methodically. Detective Martinez testified about the investigation, walking the jury through each piece of evidence with professional precision. Tom, the private investigator, explained the cell phone tower data and GPS analysis. The gas station owner showed the security footage, narrating the timestamps and identifying the defendants. The tox screen specialist explained lorazepam, how it worked, what dosages would incapacitate someone Lena's size, how the amount found in her system matched the missing pills from Vivian's prescription. The doctor who'd prescribed those pills testified that Vivian had never mentioned severe anxiety and had only requested a small, one-time prescription. Each witness built the case higher until it was towering and irrefutable. On day 4, Morrison called Ethan to the stand. He'd prepared for this, practiced with Morrison, knew what questions were coming. But walking to that witness stand with every eye in the courtroom on him still made his heart race. He took the oath, sat down, and found Lena in the gallery. She gave him a small nod, and it was enough. Morrison started gently. Mr. Cole, can you tell the jury about the evening of October 28th? Ethan took a breath and began. He described the construction detour, the storm, the figure in his headlights that he'd almost missed. He described stopping, finding Lena barely conscious in her wheelchair, making the decision to help instead of drive past. He described her condition, hypothermic, trembling, terrified, and her immediate request not to go to a hospital. Why didn't you take her to a hospital or call the police immediately? Morrison asked. Because she begged me not to, and because she told me what had happened, that her family had drugged her and left her there to die. Given her physical condition and the terror in her eyes, I believed her. I thought the most important thing was getting her somewhere warm and safe, and then we could figure out the rest. Some might say that was a poor decision, that you should have involved authorities immediately. Some might, but I don't regret it. Lena needed help in that moment, and sometimes help means listening instead of making assumptions. Ethan's voice was steady. If I'd taken her straight to a hospital against her wishes, if her family had shown up with their rehearsed story about her being confused and disoriented, she might not have gotten the chance to tell her side. By giving her time, by taking her seriously, we were able to build a case based on evidence instead of just competing narratives. The defense attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Rhodes, approached for cross-examination with the confidence of someone who thought she had ammunition. Mr. Cole, you testified that you used to work as an insurance fraud investigator. Is that correct? Yes. And in that role, you were trained to be suspicious of people's claims, to look for inconsistencies and exaggerations, correct? I was trained to verify claims, yes. So when Miss Brooks told you this dramatic story about attempted murder, your investigator instincts would have kicked in. You would have been looking for proof, for evidence to support or contradict her account. That's true. And yet you didn't immediately verify her story. You didn't check with her family, didn't contact police, didn't seek any corroboration. You just took her word for it. But Rhodes's tone suggested this was damning. Why? Because sometimes you trust your gut over your training. And my gut told me she was telling the truth. Ethan met Rhodes's eyes steadily. I've interviewed hundreds of people making insurance claims. I know what lying looks like. Lena wasn't lying. She was traumatized and terrified and telling me something that happened to her. So yes, I believed her before I had evidence. And then I helped her gather that evidence to prove what I already knew was true. Isn't it possible you wanted to be a hero, that you saw a vulnerable young woman and decided to construct a narrative that made you important to her story? No, I saw someone who needed help and I provided it. That's not heroism, Ms. Rhodes. That's basic human decency. The cross-examination continued, Rhodes trying to paint Ethan as either incompetent or manipulative, but nothing stuck. His testimony was too consistent, too grounded in simple fact. When he finally stepped down, Morrison gave him a subtle nod of approval. On day 6, Lena took the stand. She dressed carefully that morning, professional but not too formal, clothes that suggested competence without trying too hard. Her wheelchair was positioned beside the witness stand, visible to the jury, a silent reminder of the vulnerability Vivian and Tyler had exploited. Morrison started with background. Lena's childhood, her mother's death, her father's remarriage, the years with Vivian and Tyler that had seemed normal, even good sometimes. The will reading that changed everything. Tell the jury about October 28th, Morrison said gently. Start with dinner. Lena's voice was steady, hands folded in her lap. We had chicken, garlic and lemon, one of my father's favorite recipes. Vivian had been unusually nice that week, talking about maybe taking a trip together, acting like things were getting better between us after months of tension. I thought maybe we were healing. What happened after dinner? I went to my room around 7:15 to read. About 45 minutes later, I started feeling dizzy, disoriented. I thought I was getting sick, but it got worse fast. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't coordinate my movements properly. I tried to call out, but my voice wasn't working right. What's the next thing you remember clearly? Waking up in the back seat of a car. Tyler was driving. Vivian was in the passenger seat. It was raining hard. I tried to ask what was happening, but the words wouldn't come out right. I was aware but trapped in my own body. Morrison walked her through the rest, the car stopping, Tyler removing her from the vehicle. The moment she understood what was happening. Lena's voice cracked slightly when describing how she'd watched them drive away, but she didn't cry. She just told the truth, exactly as Morrison had coached her. The defense's cross-examination was brutal. Rhodes approached with sympathy that felt calculated. Miss Brooks, I'm sorry for everything you've been through. Losing your father, dealing with your disability, feeling isolated. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, Lena agreed carefully. Your father's death was particularly hard, wasn't it? The obituary mentioned you spoke at his funeral. You were very close to him. I was. And after his death, you struggled. You've testified to that. Depression, grief, difficulty adjusting to life without him. Yes, but is it possible, Rhodes interrupted gently, that in that state of grief and depression, you might have misinterpreted what happened on October 28th? That what felt like abandonment was actually your family trying to help you during a medical episode? No, that's not what happened. But you were disoriented by your own admission. You said you couldn't think clearly, couldn't coordinate your movements. How can you be certain your perception of events was accurate? Lena's jaw tightened. Because I heard them. I heard Tyler ask how long and Vivian say the cold would do the work. Those aren't words you misinterpret. Isn't it possible you heard something else and your traumatized mind filled in the gaps with the worst possible interpretation? No, I know what I heard. Rhodes shifted tactics. Miss Brooks, you inherited $3.4 million from your father. That's a significant sum. Yes. And your stepmother and stepbrother received considerably less. That must have created tension. It did. Did you ever consider that they might have felt hurt by your father's decision? That they might have felt they deserved more after years of being part of your family? Objection, Morrison called. Relevance? Your Honor, I'm establishing the emotional context of the family dynamics. I'll allow it. But get to your point, Ms. Rhodes. Rhodes turned back to Lena. Did you ever offer to share your inheritance to help ease that tension? I offered to give them the house, to use some of the money to help them if they needed it, but I also wanted to protect my father's wishes. Lena's voice was firm. He left me that money for a reason. He knew what he was doing. Or perhaps he was ill and not thinking clearly. Perhaps my father's mind was perfectly clear until the end, Lena interrupted, anger flashing in her eyes. He made those decisions deliberately because he wanted to make sure I was taken care of, and Vivian and Tyler tried to kill me for it. That's what happened. That's the truth. The courtroom was silent. Rhodes had pushed too hard, and Lena had pushed back with a conviction that resonated. The cross-examination continued for another hour, Rhodes trying different angles, but none of them worked. Lena was too prepared, too honest, too grounded in simple fact. When she finally stepped down, exhaustion written across her face, Morrison met her with a reassuring nod. The prosecution rested its case after 11 days of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming: physical proof, witness testimony, expert analysis, and Lena's own clear account. The defense had tried to create doubt, but had only managed to look desperate. The defense's case took 3 days and felt hollow from the start. They called character witnesses who testified that Vivian was a loving stepmother and Tyler a devoted stepbrother. They called a neuropsychologist who suggested that cerebral palsy could affect perception and memory, though he had to admit under cross-examination that he had never examined Lena and couldn't speak to her specific cognitive function. They called no one who could actually contradict the GPS data, the cell phone records, or the gas station footage. Because there was no one who could. Vivian took the stand in her own defense, playing the grieving stepmother perfectly. She cried at the right moments, her voice breaking when she talked about searching for Lena, her fear that they'd lost another family member. She insisted they'd only wanted to help, that the GPS data was explained by their frantic search patterns, that the missing pills were from doses she'd taken herself for anxiety about Lena's declining mental health. It was a good performance, but Morrison's cross-examination dismantled it piece by piece. Mrs. Brooks, you testified that you were searching frantically for Lena. Is that correct? Yes. We were terrified. And yet when you stopped at the gas station at 9:47 p.m., the security footage shows you checking your phone calmly. Does that look like terror to you? Morrison played the footage. The jury watched Vivian sitting in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone with the relaxed posture of someone on an ordinary errand. I was trying to stay composed, for Tyler's sake. You also testified that Lena took the lorazepam herself, possibly in a suicide attempt or accidental overdose. But the toxicology expert testified that the amount in her system was consistent with the missing pills from your prescription. How do you explain that? I don't know. Maybe she found my pills. Maybe you put them in her food at dinner? Morrison's voice was sharp. Maybe you planned this weeks in advance, getting that prescription specifically for this purpose. No, that's not... Mrs. Brooks, where exactly did you search for Lena on October 28th? The neighborhood, the park, everywhere we could think of. But not Route 9. Not the area where your car's GPS data places you at 9:08 p.m. We must have driven through there while searching. I don't remember every road. You don't remember the specific location where your stepdaughter was found barely alive? The location your GPS proves you were at during the exact time frame she describes? Vivian had no answer that didn't damn her further. Tyler didn't take the stand. His lawyer advised against it, which told the jury everything they needed to know. Closing arguments came on a Thursday. Morrison was devastating, walking the jury through the evidence piece by piece, showing how every element fit together into an undeniable picture. Vivian and Tyler had means, motive, and opportunity. They had drugged Lena, transported her to a remote location, and abandoned her to die. The only reason they were sitting in this courtroom instead of attending Lena's funeral was because a stranger took a wrong turn. Rhodes's closing focused on reasonable doubt, on the possibility of misunderstanding, on the tragedy of a family torn apart by grief and miscommunication. It was eloquent and heartfelt and utterly unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Ethan and Lena waited in a conference room with Morrison, neither of them eating the sandwiches someone had brought, both of them watching the clock like it held answers. Maya was with Diane, being told that Daddy was at an important meeting and would explain everything later. When the bailiff finally came to tell them the jury had reached a verdict, Lena's hand found Ethan's and held tight. The courtroom filled quickly, reporters and spectators crowding the benches. Vivian and Tyler sat rigid at the defense table, faces carefully neutral. The jury filed in, none of them looking at the defendants, which Morrison had said was a good sign, but felt like torture to wait through. The judge asked the foreman if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree against Vivian Brooks, how do you find?" "Guilty." Lena gasped, tears streaming down her face. Ethan's arm came around her shoulders, holding her steady. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder against Vivian Brooks?" "Guilty." "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree against Tyler Brooks?" "Guilty." "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder against Tyler Brooks?" "Guilty." The courtroom erupted. Vivian's face crumpled, tears flowing freely now that the performance didn't matter. Tyler sat frozen, staring at nothing. Their lawyers were already whispering about appeals, but everyone knew the evidence was too strong, the verdict too justified. Sentencing would come later, but Morrison had told them to expect 15 to 20 years minimum. The judge would consider the premeditation, the exploitation of Lena's disability, the callousness of the crime. Lena turned to Ethan, burying her face in his shoulder, her whole body shaking with sobs that were relief and grief and vindication all mixed together. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." "It's over," he confirmed, holding her tight. "You did it. You survived and you fought and you won." Outside the courthouse, Morrison spoke to the press while Ethan and Lena slipped out a side entrance. They drove home in silence, both of them processing, both of them exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. At Ethan's house, Maya was waiting with Diane, both of them watching the news coverage on TV. Maya ran to Lena immediately. "They said on TV that the bad people have to go to jail. Is that true?" "It's true," Lena said, kneeling down to Maya's level. "They're going to face consequences for what they did." "Good. You're safe now, right?" "I'm safe. Thanks to your dad and the police and a lot of people who believed me." "I believed you too," Maya said seriously. "The whole time." That night, after Maya was asleep and Diane had gone home, Lena and Ethan sat on the back porch under stars that had witnessed their entire journey. 6 months from attempted murder to conviction. 6 months from strangers to something neither of them had quite named yet, but both understood. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "Now you live," Ethan said simply. "You build the life you want. You help other people who need it. You figure out what comes next." "And us? What happens with us?" Ethan turned to face her fully. "I think that's up to you. I know what I want. I want this, dinners and homework help, and terrible cookies and all of it. I want Maya to keep having you in her life. I want to keep falling asleep thinking about you and waking up knowing you're 10 minutes away. But Lena, you've just won your life back. You deserve time to figure out what you want without pressure or expectation." "What if I already know what I want?" "Then tell me." Lena took a breath, gathering courage that came easier now after everything she'd survived. "I want this too. All of it. The dinners and the chaos and Maya's questions and you. I want to keep building this thing we've been building, but officially now. Not just trauma bonding or survival mode. Real partnership. Real family." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I've spent 6 months being independent, having my own space, proving to myself that I can stand on my own. And I can. But I don't want to stand alone. I want to stand with you." Ethan's hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll stand together. We'll build something real." He kissed her then, soft and certain, a promise of everything they could become. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling through tears. "I should probably tell Maya," Ethan said. "About us. About what this means." "What does it mean?" "It means you're family now. Not the guest staying with us, or the friend who comes for dinner. Family. If that's okay with you." "That's more than okay." They told Maya the next morning over pancakes. explained that Daddy and Lena cared about each other in a special way, that Lena would be around even more now, that their family was growing instead of just staying the same. Maya's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Does this mean Lena can come to my birthday party? As family, not just as a guest? Yes, sweetie, as family. And does this mean I can call her? Maya paused, uncertain. I don't know what to call her. Lena reached across the table, taking Maya's small hand. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Lena is perfect. Or you can make up something new. We'll figure it out together. Okay, can I still show her my dinosaurs? Always, Lena promised. In the weeks that followed, life found a new rhythm. Lena officially launched her nonprofit, an organization dedicated to protecting disabled individuals from family abuse and financial exploitation. The inheritance money that had nearly gotten her killed was now funding support systems for people in similar situations. Edward Chen helped with the legal structure. Detective Martinez served on the advisory board. Tom volunteered as investigative services for cases that needed them. The organization was called Second Chances, and its first office was in downtown, right next to a coffee shop that gave Lena a discount because they'd followed her trial and admired her courage. Ethan returned to work full-time, but with new purpose. He discovered that helping Lena had reminded him why he'd become an investigator in the first place, because finding truth mattered, because protecting people mattered, because sometimes the system needed help to get it right. They settled into a pattern of splitting time between both houses, Lena keeping her independence while building deeper connection. Some nights at Ethan's with Maya's bedtime routine and neighborhood sounds. Some nights at Lena's with quiet and space and the creek babbling in the background. Maya thrived with the expanded family. She started calling Lena Mom naturally, not as a replacement for the mother she'd lost, but as an addition to the family she was building. Lena never tried to take Sarah's place, kept photos of Ethan's late wife visible, talked about her with Maya when the girl asked questions, honored the woman who'd come before. Sentencing came 3 months after the verdict. Vivian received 22 years. Tyler got 18 with the possibility of parole after 12. Both would be elderly before they saw freedom again, if they saw it at all. Lena attended the sentencing but didn't give a victim impact statement. Morrison had offered her the opportunity, but Lena had declined. The evidence had spoken loudly enough. She had nothing more to say to people who'd tried to erase her. Afterwards, standing outside the courthouse one final time, Lena turned to Ethan with something like peace in her expression. It's really over now, she said. Not just the trial, the whole thing. They can't touch me anymore. They can't hurt me. I'm free. You've been free since the night I found you, Ethan said. You just needed the legal system to catch up with what you already knew, that you survived and they failed, and you get to decide what comes next. Then I choose this, us, the work, Maya, all of it. 1 year after that October night, they gathered in Ethan's backyard for a celebration that wasn't quite a wedding, but felt more significant than any legal ceremony. Just family. Maya, Diane, Edward Chen, Detective Martinez, Tom, and a handful of friends who'd supported them through everything. Lena had asked for something simple. No ceremony, no vows, just a gathering of people who mattered to mark the anniversary of the night that changed everything. They ate barbecue and told stories and watched Maya play with sparklers as the sun set. When the guests had gone and Maya was asleep inside, Ethan and Lena sat on the porch swing he'd installed last month. The same porch where they'd confessed feelings months ago, where they'd mapped out futures, where they'd learned to trust that what they had was real. A year ago tonight, I was reading in my room thinking about what to make for dinner, Lena said quietly. I had no idea that in a few hours everything would change, that I'd be drugged and abandoned and nearly dead, and rescued by a stranger who got lost in a storm. Best wrong turn ever. Ethan laughed. I was thinking the same thing. I was late picking up Maya, stressed about work, just trying to get through another day. And then my headlights caught you. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd driven past, if you decided it was too risky to stop? Every day. But I try not to dwell on it because you're here now. We're here now. And whatever happens next, we're facing it together. Lena leaned into him, his arm coming around her shoulders naturally. I started the nonprofit to help other people. But I think I needed it just as much as they do. Needed to prove that what happened to me could create something good, that survival could mean more than just not dying. You've helped 14 families in 6 months, Ethan reminded her. 14 people who were being exploited or abused and now have legal protection and resources. That's not small, Lena. That's changing lives. Our life isn't small either. This thing we're building, you, me, Maya, it feels bigger than anything I imagined was possible. It is bigger, because we chose it. Not because circumstance forced us together, but because after the crisis passed, we decided this was what we wanted. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear as darkness deepened. Inside, Maya was dreaming whatever 7-year-olds dreamed about. Dinosaurs probably, or the birthday party coming up next week. Safe and loved, and completely unaware that her life had been transformed by a rainy night and her father's choice to stop for a stranger. I have something for you, Lena said, pulling a small box from her pocket. I wasn't sure when to give it to you, but tonight feels right. Inside was a simple silver bracelet engraved with coordinates. Route 9, she explained, the exact location where you found me. I had it made so I'd never forget where everything changed. Ethan turned it over in his hands, the numbers catching moonlight. It's perfect. I have a matching one. She showed him her wrist. Different coordinates, though. These are from outside your house, where I felt safe for the first time after everything. He put on the bracelet, the metal warm from her hand. I love you, Lena Brooks. I don't think I've said it plainly like that yet, but I do. I love the courage it took to survive. I love the kindness you show Maya. I love the way you've turned tragedy into purpose. I love all of it. I love you too, Ethan Cole. I love that you stopped when everyone else drove past. I love that you believed me. I love that you taught Maya to help people even when it's complicated. I love that you still talk about your wife with respect and keep her memory alive. I love the life we're building. They kissed under stars that had witnessed the whole journey, from crisis to recovery to whatever came next. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Those didn't exist in real life. But it was real, and it was theirs, and it was built on the foundation of two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and chosen to make something beautiful from it. Inside, Maya stirred in her sleep, safe in a house full of love. Tomorrow she'd wake up to pancakes and laughter, and another ordinary day in a life that had stopped being ordinary the night her father took a wrong turn. Tomorrow, Lena would go to her office and help another family navigating the darkness she'd survived. Tomorrow, Ethan would go to work and come home to dinner with his family, both parts of it, the daughter he'd always had and the partner he'd found in the rain. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and old wounds that still needed healing and the million small decisions that built a life. But tonight, there was only this, two people on a porch swing, wearing bracelets engraved with coordinates that marked transformation. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the worst moments created the best futures. Two people who discovered that choosing to stop, choosing to help, choosing to love despite every reason not to, those choices changed everything. The storm that had nearly killed Lena was long gone, but its gift remained. A family forged in crisis, strengthened by survival, and committed to proving that second chances weren't just possible. They were worth everything. Years later, when Maya was old enough to understand the full story, Ethan would tell her about the night he found Lena, would explain how one choice to stop instead of drive past had transformed all their lives, would teach her that heroism wasn't about being fearless, it was about being afraid and helping anyway. Maya would understand because she'd grown up watching her father and Lena build something real from something terrible. She'd understand because she'd learned from both of them that survival was just the beginning, that healing took time, and that family was what you chose to build, not just what you were born into. But that was years away. Tonight, in this moment, there were just 3 people under one roof, a widowed father who'd learned to love again, a survivor who'd learned to live again, and a child who'd learned that sometimes families grew in unexpected ways. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all over again. The beautiful, ordinary work of being a family. The choice to keep showing up, keep loving, keep believing that what they had was worth protecting. Because it was. Because Ethan had taken a wrong turn and made the right choice. Because Lena had survived and refused to let that be the end of her story. Because Maya had room in her heart for more love, not less. And because sometimes, in the darkness of a storm, a set of headlights catches exactly what it's meant to find. Not by accident, by grace.